The story begins as we see the legendary hitman Sakamoto approaching a gang. The men are all scared seeing him, and they try to shoot him, but he easily deflects their bullets and cuts them down. Another group of gangsters arrive, but Sakamoto is able to dodge their bullets and he takes them all out. We learn he was feared by everyone, and there were also other hitmen that looked up to him. But one day, he meets a girl named Aya, and he instantly falls in love with her, so he decides to retire, and he starts a family with her, but he ends up putting on weight. We see Sakamoto in his store, where he watches a boy playing with his bow, but his arrow doesn't hit the target. So he bends over to pick it up, but the ink in his bag falls out, and it ends up staining a man's clothes. So he gets angry, and he threatens to kill the boy, but Sakamoto stops him and stabs him in the neck. But we learn it was just his imagination, and the man finds him creepy, so he decides to leave. The boy thanks Sakamoto for saving him, but a psychic hitman named Shin knows that Sakamoto thought about killing the man. Shin introduces himself, but Sakamoto thinks about attacking him, so he freaks out, telling Sakamoto to stop killing people in his mind, and he reminds him that they used to work together. He realizes that Sakamoto has started a family business, and he wants him to make his comeback, but Sakamoto tells him he's retired. Shin reminds him about his reputation, asking him why he threw it away, but he starts eating noodles, and Shin realizes that he has changed, because he used to eat nothing but field rations. Shin prepares to smoke, but Sakamoto suddenly cuts his cigarette, and he points him to a sign, which mentions that they aren't allowed to smoke there, so Shin realizes that he hasn't lost his touch. A man suddenly calls Sakamoto, saying he needs help, and Shin thinks Sakamoto is still working as a hitman. But the man just asks for help trimming a tree, and he's able to do it with incredible speed. Shin continues to watch him as he helps everyone in the town, so Shin realizes that he's not the person he used to be, telling him he looks ridiculous. Shin prepares to leave, as he notes that he hasn't seen Sakamoto in 5 years, but he still thinks he's amazing and he wants to work with him again. He receives a call from his boss, who asks him if he was able to change Sakamoto's mind, but he tells him he couldn't do it, so his boss tells him to kill Sakamoto. Shin doesn't want to do it, but his boss reminds him that no one is allowed to leave the gang. The boss tells Shin to get the job done, or he will send someone else to do it, so Shin realizes that he doesn't have a choice. That evening, Shin thinks about Sakamoto, thinking he's about to meet his end, since the boss wants him dead. Shin knows that other hitmen will try to kill Sakamoto if he doesn't do his job, and he notes that if his idol needs to die, he should be the one to do it. The next day, Shin visits Sakamoto, telling him he needs to leave the town, but he suddenly pulls out his gun, and he tries to shoot him. But Sakamoto spits out a candy, and it collides with the bullet, causing Shin to miss. Sakamoto suddenly disappears, and Shin looks around, wondering why he can't read his mind. We see Sakamoto hiding, and he launches another candy at Shin, who tries to shoot him again. But Sakamoto throws a cream puff at his head, and he appears behind him, kicking him with tremendous force. As Shin falls to the ground, he wonders what he was thinking when he thought he could kill his idol. When Shin wakes up, he sees Sakamoto's family, and they invite him to have dinner with them, but he's confused, as he wonders why they're so nice to him. He thinks the food is poisoned, but when he eats it, he realizes that it tastes amazing, and Aya thinks he's just like Sakamoto. He notes that he has never felt this way before, and he realizes that Sakamoto decided to quit because he wants to protect his family. After that, Shin thanks Sakamoto for his hospitality, and he points to a sign, which tells Shin to come again. He reports to his boss, who calls him a disgrace because he couldn't kill Sakamoto. But he begs his boss to let Sakamoto live because he has a family now. But everyone laughs at Shin, as the boss reminds him that Sakamoto must die because he abandoned his responsibilities. Shin offers to die in Sakamoto's place, and the boss accepts his offer, saying he won't kill Sakamoto. But Shin knows that the boss is lying, and he points his gun at him, so the boss orders his men to attack, and they start shooting Shin. We see Sakamoto listening in, and he realizes that Shin is in danger, so he opens his secret armory as he prepares to join the fight. Shin takes cover, and he starts shooting the gangsters, but a man gets behind him. But he realizes that Shin is gone, and he ends up getting taken out instead. Another man aims a rocket launcher at Shin, who manages to read his mind, so he jumps away, as the gangsters realize that he's using his psychic abilities to predict their movements. The boss knows that he can only read minds at close range, so they decide to keep their distance. Shin continues to fight for his life, but he realizes that he's running out of ammo, and a bullet hits his leg, so he falls to his knees. The gangsters prepare to finish him off, and he thinks it's all over for him, but Sakamoto suddenly appears to save him. The boss orders everyone to kill him, but he uses his chopsticks to stop their bullets, and he starts beating them up. The gangsters open fire, but he easily deflects their bullets and stabs them with his pens. He rushes forward, and he breaks a man's gun with his bare hands before knocking him out, and the boss realizes he's in trouble.
I'm in danger!
So he tells his bodyguards that they need to shoot Sakamoto together, but he quickly closes the distance, and he cuts the boss's gun, and he finishes them off. Shin wonders how Sakamoto knew he was there, so he reveals that he planted a bug in his gun, and Shin realizes that nothing gets past him. He mentions that he needs to leave the town, but Sakamoto gives him an apron, telling him he will get 800 yen per hour working at the convenience store. After that, we see Shin working in the shop, and Aya sees him, telling him the apron looks good on him. He sees an old lady looking for an item, and he uses his powers to help her find it, as Sakamoto's daughter Hana realizes that he really is a psychic. The boy asks him if he's enjoying his shift, so he mentions that it's better than his last job, and the boy wonders what he used to do for a living. But Sakamoto threatens to kill him if he tells the truth, so he tells the boy he used to work as a cleaner, and he continues to serve the customers who enter the shop. The next day, Shin recalls the fight they had with the gangsters, telling Sakamoto he killed everyone with a single blow. But Aya becomes upset, asking him if he's working as a hitman again, so he explains that he didn't kill anyone, saying he made sure that his attacks weren't lethal. She reminds him about the family rule, and she threatens to divorce him if he breaks it. Shin asks him about it, but Sakamoto kills him in his mind again, and he tells Shin to keep his mouth shut. They head to Niakita Chinatown, where Sakamoto buys pork buns for his family because he wants them to enjoy eating it. But as they make their way back, a girl suddenly crashes into them, and Sakamoto realizes that his pork buns are ruined. A group of gangsters appear, and we learn that she was running away from them, but the girl named Lu tells them to bring it on. Shin tells Sakamoto they should leave, but he's depressed because he thinks Hana will cry if she sees the pork buns. The gangsters charge in, but Lu knocks them down, as Shin realizes that she's using Tai Chi. They surround her, and she tries to fight back, but one of them restrains her, and they threaten her with a knife. The man prepares to stab her, but Sakamoto breaks his knife and knocks him out. Shin takes out the man restraining her, but the third man pulls out his gun, so she disarms him and beats him up. Another group of gangsters arrive, and they think Sakamoto and Shin are her friends. So they run away, as the gangsters try to shoot them, but they manage to escape. After that, the leader of the gangsters report to their boss, and he tells him what happened. But the boss becomes angry, reminding him that they killed everyone in Lu's clan just to track her down. A hitman named Bacho suddenly kills him, and he starts playing with the man's head, but his brother Sun-hee tells him he shouldn't play with dead bodies. The boss orders them to find Lu and take her key because they need it to rule the black market. Bacho asks him if they can kill anyone who gets in their way, so he tells them they can do whatever they want. We return to Lu, as she reveals that she's the daughter of a mafia family, and she explains that the gangsters want to take her key, so that they can use it to access her clan's hidden vault. Shin tells her to get rid of it, so that they will stop bothering her, but she refuses, as she reveals that her parents died protecting it, so she wants to defend it with her life. She doesn't want Shin and Sakamoto to get involved, so she bids them farewell, but Sakamoto asks her if she knows how to make pork buns. So she reveals that she knows how to make them, and he decides to help her, under the condition that she makes them for him. But Bacho suddenly kicks him away, and Sun-hee mentions that he doesn't like the way Bacho kills people. Shin wonders who they are, so Lu explains that they're twin hitmen, and they're known for charging a ridiculous amount, but they never miss their target. She adds that they're insane, because they enjoy killing people, and they even draw pictures of their victims' heads during their free time. Bacho realizes that they're famous, but Sun-hee thinks they should be ashamed, because hitmen shouldn't draw attention to themselves. Shin tries to punch him, but he stops the attack, asking Shin if he's mad because they killed his friend. But he calls them idiots, saying only amateur hitmen don't know who Sakamoto is. Bacho suddenly appears behind Lu and prepares to kill her, but Sakamoto smashes him to the ground, causing it to collapse. He realizes Sakamoto has incredible strength, and he tells Lu to surrender the key, but she refuses, saying she will guard it with her life. But he mentions that her parents told him the same thing before he killed them. So she becomes angry, and she charges in, but Sakamoto pulls her back, and Shin tells her she's being reckless. He tries to kill her, but Sakamoto catches his blade, and she wonders why he's risking his life to help her. So Sakamoto recalls the moment when he gave Aya a present, but she realized he's covered in blood, so she knows that he killed people to buy it. She mentions that she doesn't want it, and she tells him they can't be together if he doesn't change his ways. She jumps off, and she's about to fall to her death, so he rushes to save her, and they crash into the ground, but she notes that she survived thanks to the snow. She knows that he would miss her if she dies, and she tells him that everyone's loved by someone, so he should stop killing people and focus on saving them instead. We return to the present, as Shin cries after he reads Sakamoto's mind, and he tells Shin they shouldn't kill people. The twins attack him, but he parries their attacks, and they realize that they need to work together to defeat him. So they decide to use their ultimate move, and they start attacking relentlessly, but he easily dodges their attacks. They can't believe it, because nobody has ever survived after they used their ultimate technique, and they decide to do it again, but Sakamoto suddenly knocks Bacho out. Sunhee charges in, but Sakamoto destroys his weapon, and Sunhee is surprised that he was able to break it because it's extremely durable. He realizes that he can't defeat Sakamoto, so he decides to target Lu instead, but Shin throws him to the ground, and Sakamoto smashes him with a refrigerator. She asks them who they are, but Sakamoto tells her they just work at a convenience store, and she finds them amusing. We see the boss waiting for the key, as he wonders why the twins haven't returned, but Sakamoto arrives, and the boss realizes that he was able to defeat the twins. Lu threatens to kill him, so he begs for his life, and she beats him up since he killed her parents. Shin thinks he deserves another beating, but Sakamoto kills him in his mind again, telling him to stay out of it. Lu thinks she has done enough, saying her father told her she shouldn't kill people, and they use her key to open the vault. They realize it's full of treasures, but Shin notes that it contains strange items, and he reads a notebook, which mentions that it's full of the clan head's most treasured items. She wonders what her father left behind, and she sees a bottle of liquor with a note, which mentions that she should drink it when she's of age. So she decides to share it with everyone, and Sakamoto shows her the pork bun she ruined, but she tastes it and tells them that it's still good. After that, Sakamoto returns to his store, and Shin gives him an orange juice, but he's surprised to see Lu wearing an apron. She reveals that she will make pork buns while she works there, but he thinks she doesn't need to work because she already inherited her clan's treasures. But she calls him an idiot, saying she will never use her family heirlooms to pay for her daily needs, so they start to argue. But Sakamoto tells him to be quiet, and he mentions that he was moved by the reason why Sakamoto decided to stop killing. So he shows Shin the family rules, telling him to follow it, so he reads it, realizing the first rule is that they should never kill people. But we see a group watching them, and they know that Sakamoto has a huge bounty on his head. The next day, when Lu gets to the store, Shin yells at her for being late for work. He checks out their goods, but he sees a detergent in a refrigerator, and he asks her why she put it there. So she explains that it doesn't matter where they put the items, because the customers will find it anyway. He thinks she has never worked before, but she reveals that she used to help her father bury his victims, and he tells Sakamoto to fire her, because she's ruining the peaceful atmosphere. But he tells Shin to stop being mean to her, and he starts giving them orders, as they realize that he isn't acting like his usual self. The real Sakamoto joins them, so his friends wonder what's happening, but he completely ignores them. The imposter tries to stab him, but he dodges, so the man pulls out his gun. But Sakamoto threatens him with a cutter. He knows that the imposter is a hitman named Nagumo, and he realizes that Sakamoto hasn't lost his touch. Shin wonders why he wasn't able to read Nagumo's mind, but he laughs at Shin and Lu, because he was able to deceive them, so they hit him, and they ask Sakamoto about him. He mentions that he's only 18, but Sakamoto reveals that they used to work together, so he knows that Nagumo is 27. Shin and Lu beat him up for lying to them, but he mentions that Sakamoto has a 1 billion yen bounty on his head. Shin doesn't believe him, but he tells them the bounty was just posted the other day, so a few hitmen already know about it. A man suddenly arrives to deliver pizza, and he gives it to Sakamoto, but he turns out to be a hitman, and he threatens to kill Nagumo if they don't cooperate. But they ignore him, and Nagumo suddenly strangles him from behind, telling them he wasn't lying about the bounty. He prepares to kill the man, but Sakamoto stops him, so Nagumo realizes that he's now against killing people. He wonders if Sakamoto can stop the hitmen in his group, so everyone feels threatened, but he explains that he's just joking, saying they only kill other hitmen. Sakamoto wonders who wants him dead, but Nagumo explains that he doesn't know, telling him everyone has their eyes on him because he took down the gang that was after Lu. Nagumo leaves with the hitman, and Shin tries to follow him, but he suddenly disappears, as Shin wonders if he's on their side. We see a group of hitmen watching Sakamoto, and they think he looks pathetic, so they wonder why he has a bounty of 1 billion yen. But their leader tells them not to underestimate him, because he used to be in a notorious group known as the Order. He suddenly talks to them, saying he will make them suffer if they don't stop stalking him, and he destroys their camera. After that, Shin is worried that other hitmen will try to kill Sakamoto, who thinks they should keep a low profile, because they still don't know who their enemy is. But Hannah suddenly appears, and she mentions that she's ready for tomorrow, reminding him that they'll be watching Sugar Bunny together. So he becomes nervous, as he realizes that he forgot about his promise to her. They head to the amusement park, where Aya and Hannah enjoy the rides, but Sakamoto and his friends are worried, because they could be attacked at any time. Hannah mentions that the place is enormous, and she notes that their mascot looks cute. Aya tells everyone they will have fun together, but Sakamoto and Shin can't relax. Shin tells Lu they should protect him so that he can spend time with his family, but she wonders how they will find the hitmen around them since the place is so crowded. So Shin explains that he will use his powers to read everyone's minds, but he mentions that he needs to concentrate to do it. He tells Sakamoto that a hitman is approaching, and we see that he's disguised as a janitor. Lu distracts Hannah, while Sakamoto approaches the hitman, who tries to make his move, but he stabs him with his pen first, and his friends hide the man's body. They take him to a forest, where Shin mentions that Sakamoto avoided his vital organs, and he thinks it's amazing, because he knows that it's extremely difficult to pull off. Another hitman named Tatsu watches them from a distance, and he knows that Shin has psychic powers, so he wonders how he's supposed to reach Sakamoto. But he comes up with a plan, as he realizes that Shin won't be able to read anything if he just empties his mind. We see everyone riding a roller coaster, and Lu sees Tatsu, saying he looks suspicious, but Shin tells her he isn't thinking about anything. But he thinks about his cover being blown, so Shin realizes that he's a hitman. He tells Sakamoto he's in trouble, and as the ride speeds up, Tatsu tries to shoot him, but he uses his bulletproof glasses to deflect it. Shin removes his safety bar, and as the ride approaches a loop, he jumps off, and he disarms Tatsu, breaking his restraints. He jumps away with him, but Tatsu kicks Shin, who barely manages to survive the fall. He prepares to fight Tatsu, but he notes that he can't read his mind, and he realizes that the roller coaster is about to hit him. So he jumps into the air, but Tatsu throws knives at him, and he tries to dodge them, but his leg gets hit. He starts to feel strange, as he realizes that he was poisoned, and Tatsu tells him he's doomed, but he refuses to give up. Tatsu tells him he has the same eyes as Sakamoto, saying he knows that they both fear death, and he thinks it makes them weak, telling Shin he could have dodged the knives if he wasn't afraid to die. But he explains that Sakamoto fears death because he wants to protect his family, saying people fight harder when they're trying to defend something. Tatsu knows that Shin has been blinded by his poison, and the roller coaster is about to hit them again. So they jump up, but Shin lands on it, and he grabs onto Tatsu, trying to hit him, but he fights back, as Shin realizes he's in trouble. So he reads everyone's minds, and he realizes that Sakamoto is at the Sugar Bunny show, so he jumps off with Tatsu. They crash into the Sugar Bunny's tent, and one of the performers becomes upset because they interrupted the show. Tatsu threatens to kill him, but the Sugar Bunny interferes, and we learn that it's Shin, telling Tatsu he's ready for round 2. He thinks Shin doesn't stand a chance because he's still blind, but he manages to land a punch, and everyone thinks it's part of the show, so they start cheering for him. Tatsu attacks with his knives, but Shin counters with a devastating kick, and he wonders how Shin can see him. Aya talks to Sakamoto, but he keeps quiet, so she thinks he's enjoying the show, but we learn that he's giving Shin instructions while he's watching the fight. Tatsu is getting destroyed, and he wonders what's happening, because Shin is reading his every move. He manages to cut the costume, but he realizes that Shin's eyes are closed, and Sakamoto tells him to end the fight. So he kicks Tatsu with all his might, knocking him out, as the host mentions that the Sugar Bunny just used his ultimate move. So everyone celebrates, and he's glad that he was able to protect Sakamoto. We see two other assassins, Boiled and Abaguro, at the park, and Boiled mentions they will be doing things his way. But he suddenly yells at Abaguro, and he tells her not to step on the ants, because they shouldn't kill anyone other than their target. Lu tells Shin to stop moving, and she gives him the antidote for his eyes, but he finds it painful, so he runs away, but she reminds him that she still needs to use the antidote on his other eye. She thinks he's lucky because Tatsu had the antidote with him, but he explains that it's just standard practice for someone who uses poison. Sakamoto wonders who hired him, as Lu takes his poison knife and stabs him with it. She mentions that she will spill 1 drop of his antidote every second, telling him to talk before it's too late, but Shin reminds her that they still need to use it on his other eye. Tatsu reveals that he works for a company called Dondenkai, but he mentions that it's a toxic workplace, which always forces them to work alone. Shin wonders why Lu's threat worked on him, reminding him that he mocked them for fearing death. So he explains that he doesn't want to die, and he mentions that he only works part-time, so he isn't loyal to the company. He reveals that he's registered with the JAA, but Lu doesn't know about it, so Shin shows her his license, and she realizes that it stands for the Japanese Association of Assassins. He explains that it manages professional hitmen, revealing that he and Sakamoto used to be members, and he mentions that there are only 400 pros in Japan. Aya and Hana suddenly appear, and Hana recognizes Tatsu as the bad guy who got beat up. Aya wonders what they're doing there, so Shin tells her they're watching him practice for the show, and they leave to eat lunch together. Shin takes his knife, telling him to leave them alone, but he wonders why they spared his life, so Shin explains that they're just there to enjoy the amusement park. Hana gives him a band-aid, telling him she was impressed by his performance, and she bids him farewell. As they leave, we see that he has a knife, and he uses it to remove his restraints, but we learn that he no longer wants to kill Sakamoto. We see Sakamoto and the others having lunch together, but Shin mentions that he has brain fog, thinking it's because of the antidote. He notes that he won't be able to read minds because of it, so Lu tells Sakamoto they should call it a day. But Aya realizes that they're acting strange, so she wonders if they're hiding something. We see Tatsu in the restroom, as Boiled suddenly appears behind him, and Abaguro takes him down. She tries to intimidate him, but Boiled tells her she's a nice girl, so she shouldn't spread her legs. Tatsu wonders what they're doing there, so Boiled tells him they will finish his job, as Abaguro reminds him that the company will punish him for failing to kill Sakamoto. So he thanks them for their help, and Boiled mentions that the scar on his face remembers Sakamoto, so Abaguro wonders if he was the one who gave him the scar. But Boiled tells her he just tripped and fell the other day, as Tatsu notes that they're both weirdos. But he knows that they're the most brutal pair the Dondenkai has ever seen, because they killed 100 people 2 years ago, so he thinks Sakamoto and his friends don't stand a chance. We return to Sakamoto, as Shin tells Aya they're not hiding anything, and Hana asks them if they don't like the amusement park, but they tell her they're having a great time. Shin and Lu stay alert, as Sakamoto's family enjoys the rides, and they all have a great time. Later that day, Lu tells Sakamoto that the park is open and well lit, so the assassins won't attack them there. But Aya and Hana want to check out the haunted house, and they realize it's where they might get attacked. The guide welcomes everyone to the Ward of Whales, saying it's filled with the spirits of patients who died there, and she warns them that no one has left the place alive. Lu is frightened, so she starts drinking, and they enter the operating room, as Boiled watches them through a hidden camera. Sakamoto's family is having fun, but he tells his friends to stay alert, and a hitman suddenly attacks them from behind. Aya and Hana think he's just a zombie, but Sakamoto beats him up, and he suddenly stops moving, so everyone wonders what happened, but Shin is impressed by Sakamoto's moves. They see the hitman's license, realizing he was just a rookie, but Boiled and Abaguro continue to observe them. Abaguro looks forward to fighting Sakamoto, but Boiled tells her not to touch him because he has a score to settle with him. She promises to let Boiled fight him, thinking Sakamoto is his friend, but he tells her it's not the case. In a flashback, we see Sakamoto at the Hitman Training Center when Boiled tells him he defeated one of his friends during practice. But he mentions that he isn't there for revenge, and Sakamoto repeatedly hits the target as Boiled realizes that he's extremely skilled. They start spending time together, and we see them in a restaurant as Boiled mentions that everyone's celebrating Valentine's Day, but he mentions that they don't have time for love. But a group of girls suddenly approach Sakamoto, and one of them gives him a gift, saying she wants him to be her Valentine. He finds his locker filled with presents, and he sees Nagumo, who reveals that he also received gifts from the girls. He asks Sakamoto about Boiled, but he mentions that he doesn't know him, and he tells him he can have the chocolates. We return to the present, as Abaguro realizes that Boiled has a beef with Sakamoto, so she promises not to get in his way. Sakamoto defeats a group of hitmen, and Lu continues to drink, telling Shin it's just a good luck remedy, but he realizes that it's alcohol. They see a suspicious door, and they hear someone banging on the other side, but Lu is already drunk, so she opens it, and they get attacked by countless assassins. Sakamoto tries to fight them off, but he realizes that his family is in danger, and Boiled suddenly attacks him, and he gets separated from his family. Boiled wonders if Sakamoto remembers him, but he explains that he doesn't, and Boiled is sad hearing this. Shin defeats the hitman, and he sees Aya and Hana on the ground, realizing they're unconscious. Abaguro appears behind him, telling him he's no match for her, but Lu suddenly kicks her away, as he realizes that she's using Drunken Fist to fight. We return to Sakamoto, as he wonders where his family is, but Boiled tells him to look for them himself. So he becomes upset, and he charges in, but there's an explosion, and Boiled smashes him to the ground. Abaguro hears them fighting, so she gets distracted, and Lu tries to punch her, but she blocks the attack and shakes Lu's head, which makes her dizzy. She orders her men to tie Shin up, and they threaten him with a chainsaw, as Abaguro mentions that she wants to see what Lu can do. So she decides to play a game with her, telling Lu she needs to land a hit every 10 seconds, or her men will kill Shin. She tells Lu she's running out of time, but she starts crying, saying she can't do it, so they realize she's an emotional drunk. Boiled notes that it's been 5 years since Sakamoto retired, so he's nowhere near as good as he used to be. He tries to fight back, but Boiled uses his bombs to take him down, telling him he's no match for his Super Ball bombs. He suddenly remembers Boiled, because he always gave his equipment ridiculous names, and we learn that Sakamoto found him cringy, but he recalls seeing a note written by Boiled. Boiled continues to attack him, as he reveals that he always looked up to him, but he mentions that he's upset, because Sakamoto has become a weakling, who can't even protect his family. He attacks Sakamoto with his rocket dynamite punch, which sends him flying, and he thinks the fight is over. But he suddenly feels threatened, as Sakamoto gets back up, saying he knows what Boiled's bombs are made of. He mentions that he now remembers him, and we see that he's back in his prime, telling Boiled he will show him what he can do. Abaguro starts fighting Lu, who dodges her attack, and counters with her hair, but she mentions that she just got lucky. The men reset the timer, and Shin notes that he's still alive, because Lu is putting up a good fight, but he tells her to fight seriously. Abaguro smashes her to the ground, and she thinks the fight is over, but Lu suddenly starts laughing, and she continues to drink, so Abaguro attacks her again, but she can't hit her, so she grabs onto her, but she still misses, and Lu counters with a kick. Abaguro is impressed, telling Lu to try killing her, but she explains that she can't, because it's against the family rules. But Abaguro tells her she isn't a part of Sakamoto's family, and she calls her an idiot, but Lu becomes angry hearing this. Abaguro notes that she's getting stronger, and she gets pushed back, as she realizes that Lu is about to finish her off. But Lu's fist barely touches her, and she suddenly sobers up, asking Shin what's happening. Abaguro appears to be upset, since Lu didn't finish her off, but she's actually happy, because she has finally found a worthy rival. We return to Sakamoto, as Boiled wonders how he lost his weight, but he thinks it doesn't matter, because he's convinced that Sakamoto has already lost his touch. But he suddenly charges in, and punches him away. Boiled struggles to keep up with him, and he uses his rocket dynamite punch to fight back. But Sakamoto destroys it, and continues to beat him up, as he realizes that Sakamoto is back in his prime. He throws his super ball bombs, but Sakamoto catches all of them and uses them to attack Boiled, who wonders why he's no match for Sakamoto. So he explains that he's fighting to protect his family, revealing that they give him the strength to fight on. We see a couple on the Ferris wheel, and the boy goes in for a kiss, but Sakamoto and Boiled crash into a nearby cab, and Boiled admits that he still respects Sakamoto. Aya wakes up, but she wonders why they're no longer in the haunted house, so Shin tells her he doesn't know what happened. But she wonders why his clothes are dirty, so he explains that it's because of the zombies, and he leaves to look for Sakamoto. We return to the Ferris wheel, as Sakamoto and Boiled leave the cab, and the conductor asks them if they're okay. So Boiled tells her she shouldn't embarrass them by asking them if they got hurt, but she tells him he needs to pay for the damages. After that, Boiled admits defeat, and he promises to leave Sakamoto alone, but he completely ignores him. He starts eating a pork bun, and Boiled mentions that he wants to taste it, but Sakamoto gives him his leftovers, saying he needs to save the rest for his family. Shin is surprised to see him, wondering how he lost weight, and he starts taking pictures of him. Boiled asks him what he'll do about his bounty, telling him the Don Denkai will keep trying to kill him, but he freaks out as he sees Aya, who realizes that there's a bounty on his head. She asks them to explain what's happening, so Sakamoto reveals that hitmen have been trying to kill him, and she wonders why he didn't tell her about it, so he explains that he didn't want her to worry. But she reminds him about the sixth family rule, which mentions that they aren't allowed to keep secrets from each other, telling him to deal with his problems without hiding anything from her. Everyone enjoys the parade, but Shin wonders how they can get rid of the bounty, so Sakamoto mentions that they should take down the client. But Abaguro thinks they won't be able to find him because the bounties are managed by the JAA. Boiled thinks their boss might be able to help them, but he mentions that he doesn't know where to find him, and he leaves with Abaguro. Shin wonders what they should do next, because they don't know where to find the Don Denkai headquarters, but Sakamoto mentions that he knows someone who can help them. The next day, Sakamoto regains all the weight he lost, and Shin wonders how it happened, but Lu isn't surprised, because he never stops eating. They head to a video rental store, where Shin sees a film about the Don Denkai, and he asks Sakamoto about the shop, so he reveals that it sells information in movie form. They watch the film together, and we learn that the Don Denkai is a hitman organization with over 50 members. It was founded by an assassin who turned a building into their headquarters, but he ends up dying at the end of the movie. The shopkeeper tells them to pay over 700,000 yen for the film, and Sakamoto uses his credit card to pay for it. But Shin notes that it's expensive, asking him how he still has that much money, so he reveals that he still has his savings from his bachelor days. As he's about to leave, the shopkeeper warns him to be careful, because someone close to him might be involved. So Sakamoto asks him what he means, but he mentions that he can't reveal everything, because the film isn't available yet. We see Nagumo with the other members of the order, and a hitman named Hyo asks him about Sakamoto. But he plays dumb, and Hyo finds him sus, so he tries to stab him, but Nagumo tells him to save his knife for the main dish. Another hitman named Shishiba mentions that they're causing a mess, but an assassin named Saragi warns him about his food. So he calls the chef, and he stabs his hand, asking him why there are onions in his dish. A man named Arya thanks them for coming, and he reveals that he's from the JAA, saying he's glad to see all the members of the order. But Hyo mentions that 4 of them didn't attend, and Shishiba notes that 3 of them are always absent. But he wonders why their oldest member Takamura isn't there, thinking he must have forgotten because of his age. Arya reveals that someone has been killing the hitmen in the JAA, so they've decided to ask for the order's help to hunt down the man responsible for it. Sakamoto and his friends reach the Don Denkai headquarters, and he thinks they should avoid fighting, so they decide to sneak in. We see 2 guards in the hall, and Shin and Sakamoto take them down, but they remove their spy outfits, mentioning that they got bored of it. Shin notes that the boss's room is on the top floor, and they need to climb up from the 2nd floor window to get there. Another guard hears someone knocking at the window, and he opens it to check who's there, but he suddenly gets electrocuted. Sakamoto and his friends tie him up, and they make their way to the boss's room, but they realize everyone is already dead. Nagumo mentions that he killed all of the Don Denkai officials, and he threatens to kill Sakamoto. He suddenly appears behind Shin and stabs his neck, so Lu panics, but Nagumo laughs at them as they realize that it was just a prank. so they beat him up, as he reveals that everyone was dead by the time he got there. He mentions that 100 hitmen have been murdered over the past few months, and the killer always leaves an X at the scene, so the order decided to call him X. Lou asks Nagumo about the order, so he reveals that they're a special task unit, and only the best hitmen can join them. They report directly to the JAA, and they take down dangerous assassins to maintain order in the world. He mentions that Sakamoto used to be one of them, and he tells him to be careful of X, saying the killings started when his bounty was posted. The next day, Sakamoto returns to his store, and they see a hitman looking for him, so Lou tells Hana to press a button, which knocks the man out. Aya mentions that the hitmen are bad for business, but she thinks it's okay, because they're buying band-aids from their shop. Hana gives the hitmen band-aids, and they mention that her father is amazing. But he recalls that Nagumo told him he needs to be careful, because he's nowhere near as good as he used to be, so he tells his friends they need to get stronger. Sakamoto rides with Hana, and everyone notes that he's ridiculously fast, while Shin reads the customers' minds, and gives them the items they're looking for. Lou decides to train by drinking alcohol, and a man enters the store, but she instantly attacks him, and he wonders how she knew he was an assassin. We see a hitman named Heisuke as he feeds his bird Paisu. But we learn that its food is worth 10,000 yen, and he barely has enough money to feed himself, so he hasn't been eating well. But he thinks he will be able to solve his problem by collecting the bounty on Sakamoto. We see Shin and Lou cleaning at the store, as they mention that it's damaged, because countless hitmen have been trying to kill Sakamoto. He notes that they need to do major repairs, but Shin mentions that they need money for that, and he shows them an ad about a paintball tournament, which has a prize of 1,000,000 yen. But Heisuke suddenly joins them, and he mentions that he's looking for Taro Sakamoto, telling them to hand him over. They realize that he's a hitman, but he doesn't recognize Sakamoto, so they tell him they don't know the person he's looking for. He mentions that the store is called Sakamoto's, but they explain that there are countless stores with that name. Shin reads his mind, and he realizes that Heisuke is sad, because he won't be able to eat sushi, so Shin realizes that he's an idiot. He mentions that someone told him he can find Taro Sakamoto in the shop, but Shin tells him it's a common name, so there are millions of Taro Sakamotos in Japan. Heisuke thinks he'll never find him, so he starts crying, as he mentions that he doesn't have enough money to eat breakfast. They hear his stomach growling, and he leaves the shop, but they realize that he's staring at them, so they decide to give him some pork buns. He thanks them for the food, but Shin notes that he's the dumbest hitman he has ever met. That evening, we see Heisuke fixing his tent, which his grandmother gave him, but he notes that it's in terrible condition. He recalls that his boss told him to quit because he doesn't have what it takes to be a hitman, and he's determined to prove him wrong. But there's suddenly a gust of wind, which causes his tent to collapse. He sees the ad about the paintball tournament, and he thinks he can buy a home with the 1,000,000 yen cash prize, so he decides to participate. The next day, we see everyone preparing for the tournament, as Shin and Sakamoto receive their earpieces, which they can use to communicate. But Lou decides to just cheer for them, since she thinks it's a barbaric game. He reminds her that they're doing it for the money, but he thinks it's okay if she doesn't join them, because they don't need her help to win the contest. They see Heisuke arguing with a girl, who tells him he can't take part by himself, since it's a team competition. So he falls into despair, but he sees Sakamoto and his friends, and he begs them to help him, so they reluctantly allow him to join their team. The host welcomes everyone to the event, telling the players they will be eliminated if they're hit, and she tells them to enjoy the game, saying everyone will clean the street after the event. The players get into position, but Heisuke wonders what he's supposed to do, so Shin just tells him to shoot their enemies. We see a team watching them, thinking they're all noobs, but as the game begins, Heisuke shoots all of them in an instant. Shin is impressed by his skills, and the men can't believe what happened. Another team attacks them from behind, so Shin shoots them down, and we see players behind Sakamoto, but he disarms them and takes them out. The host thinks his team will win the game, and Heisuke is happy to have friends that watch his back. But Shin can't believe he already trusts them. He notes that they're incredibly skilled, and he offers to serve as their decoy, telling them to cover him. But we see Lou has been drinking, and she calls Sakamoto by his full name, so Heisuke checks the picture of his target. He thinks it looks nothing like Sakamoto, but Lou mentions that his appearance changed, because he gained weight, saying his glasses and hair are still the same. Shin interrupts her, and he mentions that the picture isn't Sakamoto, but Heisuke doesn't believe him, and he points his gun at Sakamoto. He mentions that he will get the prize and the bounty, but the other players start shooting them, so they run for cover. Shin and Sakamoto take them out, but Heisuke calls Paisu, who gives him his rifle, and he aims at Sakamoto. Shin realizes that he's holding a real gun, and he pulls the trigger, but Sakamoto deflects it with his hand. Heisuke realizes that killing him won't be easy, so he decides to find a good spot, and Shin prepares to run after him, but Sakamoto tells him they still need to defeat the other players. Heisuke realizes that his target was right under his nose, and he starts crying because he thought Shin and Sakamoto were his friends. But he's determined to complete his mission so that he can make his mark as a hitman. The game reaches its climax as the players continue to shoot each other, but Shin can't find Heisuke, so he decides to look around. But Sakamoto tells him he needs to be careful when dealing with a sniper, saying they must find Heisuke without giving away their position. So he carefully looks around, but Heisuke shoots a mirror, and the bullet almost hits him, so Shin wonders how he was able to find them. We see Paisu flying around, as it tells Heisuke that Sakamoto dodged his bullet, and he uses his earpiece to talk to Shin, who mentions that he almost hit Sakamoto with a random ricochet. But he knows that it wasn't random, because Heisuke's bullet has an absurd spin rate, so he knows that it was designed to bounce. Heisuke reveals that he's using triple rebound rounds, so it's impossible to track their trajectory. Shin reminds him that they're friends, but he explains that he needs to do his job as a hitman, and he opens fire, so Shin and Sakamoto start running away. They dodge the bullets, but they reach a dead end, so they turn back, and they find a place to hide. Heisuke recalls that when he was young, he was never able to measure up to his peers, because he wasn't good at anything. But he discovered his talent for shooting, and he started working as a hitman, telling his superiors that he's an excellent sniper. But one of them looks down on him, telling him their company doesn't need a one-trick pony. We see him in the middle of a fight, but he's completely helpless, and his companions realize that he can't even handle a knife. So they make him do the paperwork, but he struggles to complete them, and his superior tells him to quit, because he doesn't have what it takes to become a hitman. He ends up getting fired, and he starts living a miserable life, but he sees the bounty on Sakamoto's head, so he becomes determined to take him out and prove himself to everyone. We return to the present, as Heisuke thinks out loud, saying he needs to prove that he's an awesome sniper, but Shin reminds him that his mic is still on, so he realizes that Shin heard everything. He tells him to stop caring about what other people think, because he doesn't need to prove himself to anyone, and he screams into the mic. So Heisuke becomes startled, and we learn that when people are surprised, Shin can read their thoughts from further away, and he sees Heisuke on a roof. Heisuke removes his earpiece, but he realizes Sakamoto is looking at him. Sakamoto throws a pebble with tremendous force, and it shatters his rifle and knocks him down. He can't believe how powerful Sakamoto is, and he realizes that he never even stood a chance. After that, the host announces that Sakamoto's team won the game, and Heisuke starts crying, thinking he's a terrible sniper. Shin tells him to man up, but he thinks they will never understand him because they don't know what it's like to be weak. But Sakamoto mentions that he's the best sniper he has ever seen, and Heisuke is touched by his words. Shin gives him his share of the money, but he realizes that it's only 50 yen, so Shin reminds him that he destroyed the town with his bullets, so they needed to pay for the repairs. Sakamoto returns to the shop, and Aya thinks it's a shame that even though he won the contest, they had to spend all of the money to fix the town. But she tells him it's okay, because he was able to return safely. Shin wonders how Sakamoto asked her out, and he starts reading her thoughts, but Sakamoto kills him in his mind again, reminding him not to use his powers on them. We see Sakamoto with his family, as he watches Hana in her classroom, and Aya is glad that Shin and Lu are watching over the store today. He thinks they're doing fine, but we see them arguing in the shop, because Lu is wearing Shin's apron. He mentions that he's the one in charge while Sakamoto isn't around, but she thinks he's acting like a child. He reminds her that he can read her mind, but she tells him to stop doing it without her permission. Heisuke joins them, and he asks for free pork buns, but he sees them arguing, as Lu mentions that she doesn't like spending time with Shin, because he keeps reading her thoughts. He becomes upset hearing this, and he walks away, as Heisuke wonders if he can eat the pork buns on the ground, but she just tells him to leave. She thinks about Shin, as she notes that she has never seen him like that before. But a group of men suddenly enter the shop, and they think she's Shin, because she's wearing his name tag, so they take her away. Their leader Tanaka mentions that Shin disappeared from the lab 10 years ago, and they think he dyed his hair so that he can disguise himself as a girl. The driver named Seba thinks they have the wrong person, but Tanaka becomes upset because he's convinced that they have captured their target. He reveals that the lab performed experiments to create psychics, and Shin is the only subject they worked on, so he has the ability to read minds. Tanaka finds him creepy, thinking nobody likes him because of his powers, and he calls him a miserable loser. But Luz suddenly attacks him, telling him not to pick on Shin, because he's a much better person than him. She reveals that she's not Shin, and Tanaka can't believe it, but Seba tells him he needs to learn to listen to people. Meanwhile, Shin returns to the store, but he realizes that Lu isn't there, and Sakamoto arrives with his family. He asks Shin what's going on, so he explains the situation, and Sakamoto reveals that he knows where to find her, because he put a tracker on his name tag. We return to Tanaka, as he mentions that the lab will kill them, because they got the wrong person. He thinks they can just pretend that Lu is Shin, but Seba tells him his plan will never work, and she thinks she deserves to be kidnapped because of everything she said to Shin. But he suddenly arrives with Sakamoto, who tells the kidnappers to set her free. Tanaka realizes that they found their target, so they can return to the lab without fearing for their lives. He sends his men to stop Shin and Sakamoto, but they're no match for them, and Lu tells Tanaka to apologize before things get worse. But he tells her to shut up, telling her they'll get into trouble if they return empty-handed. They realize that Shin is above them, so Tanaka orders Seba to stop him, and he decides to do it, telling Tanaka to take the wheel for him. He prepares to fight Shin, as he mentions that he hates having an incompetent boss, and he suddenly becomes invisible. Shin can't see him, and Seba knocks him down, but he lands on another car. Seba approaches Sakamoto, who grabs him by the neck, so he realizes that Sakamoto can see him, but he stabs the fuel tank, causing the bike to explode. Tanaka's group manages to escape, and he asks Seba if he was able to capture Shin, but he explains that he forgot about him. Sakamoto mentions that the tracker stopped at the Okatabe Museum, and he asks Shin about Tanaka's group, so he reveals that they were sent by the lab, which is the research facility where he grew up. He mentions that they're a bunch of weirdos, but he notes that they weren't dangerous, so he wonders why they sent Tanaka's group. Sakamoto and Shin head to the Okatabe Museum, as Shin mentions that the lab is hidden in the basement. They realize it's crowded, and two girls welcome them to the museum, asking them if they want a souvenir photo. Shin explains that they're in a hurry, but the girls tell them it will only take a second, so they decide to take a picture, and Shin likes it, so he pays 5,000 yen to get a copy. He notes that the dinosaur head is perfect for hiding their faces, so they decide to wear it, as he leads Sakamoto to the lab. We see Tanaka in the lab, where he takes Lu to his boss Kashima, telling him she's the person he's looking for. But he notes that she looks nothing like Shin, and he threatens to kill Tanaka if he's lying. Seba betrays him, telling Kashima he knows where to find the real Shin, so Tanaka gets taken away. Shin tells Sakamoto how to access the secret passage, and a door appears, but when Shin enters Okatabe as the password, it triggers the alarm, as the system mentions that there's an intruder. A bear suddenly starts shooting them, so Sakamoto takes it down, but another one appears, so Shin takes a spear, which he uses to stab the bear's head. But the system detects that the bears have been defeated, so it activates a dinosaur, which attacks them with its tail. Sakamoto thinks Hana would like it, and he wants to show it to her, so he decides not to destroy it. It continues to attack them, as Shin realizes that there's a device in its mouth, so he tells Sakamoto to shoot it with his electric gun. He tells Shin his plan is brilliant, and the dinosaur tries to attack him, but he smashes its tail to the ground and shoots the device, causing the dinosaur to stop moving. But the system activates it again, and it starts attacking relentlessly. Sakamoto tries to take another shot, but it destroys his pistol, so he becomes upset, and he decides to get rid of it. It charges at him, but he smashes the device in its mouth, and destroys its body with a devastating blow. We see the scientists in the lab, as they hear the commotion, but a guard tells them to get back to work. One of them, named Ishikawa, explains that they need to rest, because they haven't slept in 3 days. But the guard tells them to finish their research if they want to be freed, and he kicks Ishikawa, who falls to the ground, but he mentions that the research will never succeed. So the guard threatens to kill him, but Shin suddenly takes him out. The scientists recognize him, and he asks them about the director, so Ishikawa reveals that he's locked up in the lowest floor, saying the lab was taken over by a group of assassins. Ishikawa reveals that 1 year ago, Kashima arrived with his group, and they told the scientists to invent new weapons for them. Ishikawa adds that he's their boss, but there are other leaders who don't wear suits. He tells Shin and Sakamoto they need to leave, but they see the leader of the floor approaching, so the scientists help them hide in the locker. We cut to Tanaka, who begs the guards to let him out, but Lu kicks him, and she tries to break out of the cell. But the director Asakura tells her she can't break the bars with a rock, and he reveals that he has a plan. We see the leader of the floor named Horiguchi, who asks the scientists what they're hiding, and Ishikawa plays dumb. But he stabs his hand, because he knows that they're hiding something, and Shin becomes upset, so he comes out of hiding. Horiguchi realizes that he's there to stop their research, and he wants to show him the beauty of his work, so he takes out a syringe and stabs him from behind. He mentions that it's time for an experiment, and he activates a switch, which changes Shin's speaking pattern. He reveals that he placed a needle in Shin's head, which messes up the signals in his brain, and he starts attacking, but he struggles to hit Horiguchi. But Sakamoto joins the fight, and he knocks him out with a single punch. He reveals that he was stuck in the locker, and he's glad that he was finally able to escape, telling Shin he will help him clean up his childhood home. We see Saragi and Shishiba approaching the museum, because Nagumo told them that the place is connected to X. But they know his information isn't the most reliable, so they decide to investigate it themselves. Heisuke heads to the store, as he reveals that he found 500 yen, so he wants to buy some food. But he realizes that Hana is the only one there, and she's sad because she forgot to tell Sakamoto and his friends that they were supposed to attend a school event together. So he promises to find them for her, and Paisa flies off to search for them. Meanwhile, in the lab's basement, Lu becomes angry because she thinks Asakura was the one who got her kidnapped. But he tells her that isn't the case, and reminds her that he's also a prisoner. She realizes he's on her side, and asks him to tell her everything he knows. Horiguchi recognizes Sakamoto as a legendary hitman, and mentions that his power and speed are impressive, but he tells Sakamoto he needs to lose weight. He realizes that there's a needle stuck in his neck, and he tries to attack Horiguchi, but he ends up hitting Shin instead. He notes that his body moved on its own, and Horiguchi reveals that his needle makes them confuse friends for foes. But he suddenly punches Horiguchi, telling him he just needs to think about hitting Shin whenever he attacks, and Horiguchi realizes that he's a worthy opponent. We return to Asakura, as he reveals that he was locked up in the cell, because he didn't cooperate with the guards. Lu wonders why she was kidnapped, but he tells her he doesn't know, and he recalls that it all started because Tanaka mistook her for Shin, so she starts blaming him. Asakura mentions that he knows Shin, and he reveals that he accidentally gave him psychic powers by getting him mixed up in his research. In a flashback, we see Asakura looking after Shin because his friend asked him to do it, but he suddenly disappeared. So Asakura decided to raise Shin, who was with him while he was studying how to give the human brain supernatural powers. He thinks his research will make everyone happy if he figures things out, so he's determined to succeed, but he struggles to raise Shin while he works on his experiment. The other scientists think he's just wasting his time because his research will never work, but Shin tells them he believes in him. One evening, Asakura realizes he's making progress, but Shin suddenly wakes up and drinks the serum he's working on. It causes him to throw up, so Asakura becomes worried, but he notes that Shin hasn't changed at all, so he thinks his experiment was a failure. But he realizes that Shin can read minds, and he starts telling everyone what they're thinking. But they find him creepy, so they start avoiding him, and Asakura wants to cure him, but Shin tells him he wants to keep his powers. Asakura feels guilty because he got Shin mixed up in his research, but he becomes upset and runs off. We return to the present, as Asakura mentions that he doesn't know if he can face Shin, but Lu notes that he's happy with his powers. She mentions that she also had a fight with him, and she tells Asakura they should apologize together. She reveals that Sakamoto has a family rule, that they should make peace when they fight, and Asakura is determined to make it up to Shin. He uses a solution to melt the lock, and Lu wonders why he didn't use it earlier. So he reveals that he wanted to stay there, because he didn't want to help the others with their research. The door suddenly opens, and the guard rushes to see what's wrong, but Lu suddenly knocks him out. Sakamoto hits Shin again, as Horiguchi reveals that he can turn the switch off, and he uses a drug to make his arm massive. He starts attacking them, so Shin tries to fight back, but Horiguchi activates the switch again, and Shin ends up hitting Sakamoto. Horiguchi strengthens his leg, and he pushes Shin back. Sakamoto tries to attack him from behind, but he activates the switch, so Sakamoto hesitates, and he blows him away. He thinks even the legendary hitman is no match for the power of science, and he stabs Shin repeatedly, saying he doesn't know why the boss is interested in his psychic powers. He thinks it's stupid, but Sakamoto tells him that it isn't true, and he mentions that he can prove it to him. Horiguchi decides to go all out, and he suddenly becomes massive, so Shin is worried, but Sakamoto tells him he has a plan. Shin walks forward, but he turns around, and Horiguchi prepares to take him out. But Sakamoto tells Shin he'll use his right hand, so he dodges, and the attack lands on Horiguchi. They stick to the plan, and Sakamoto delivers a devastating combo, which sends Horiguchi flying. After that, the scientists remove the needles from Sakamoto and Shin's neck. They think they owe Shin an apology, but he tells them he's happy with his power, and he mentions that he's working for Sakamoto. Ishikawa thanks him for looking after Shin, and he tells Sakamoto he was barely able to dodge his attacks, telling him he's amazing despite gaining weight, but he kills Shin in his mind again, because he insulted his body. They make their way to the basement, as Sakamoto tells Shin not to underestimate the members of the Order, because he's nothing compared to them. Sakamoto tells him to play dead if he sees one of them, but he suddenly activates a trap, so he pushes Shin to safety, and he falls into a hole. We see Kashima with his friends Onigara and Takamito, as they realize that their men were killed by Shishiba and Saragi. He recognizes them as members of the Order, and he prepares to take them on. Shishiba asks him if X is there, revealing that he's their target, but Kashima mentions that he doesn't know him. Shishiba tells him his group has violated JAA regulations by manufacturing illegal weapons and forcing their hostages to do the work for them. He threatens to wipe them out, so Onigara and Takamito ask Kashima if they can kill him, and he tells them to do it. But Saragi suddenly cuts their heads off, so Kashima starts crying, as he mentions they had families. He tells Shishiba and Saragi that they don't understand the value of life, and he removes his arm to reveal his weapon, as he tells them they don't deserve to be hitmen. Shishiba finds him ridiculous, because he thinks he's better than them, even though he has killed countless people. Shishiba is about to trash talk his boss, but he suddenly attacks him, and he mentions that his kills are acceptable, because he's just following his boss's orders. But Shishiba breaks his neck, and he realizes that they're working for X. As they start to walk away, Kashima gets back up, and he reveals that he has an artificial skeleton. But Sakamoto suddenly crashes into him, and Shishiba recognizes him, so he introduces him to Saragi, who thinks Sakamoto looks like a teddy bear. Kashima gets up again, and he reveals that he also knows Sakamoto, because he's the only person who was able to injure his boss. Kashima is determined to kill him, so that he can offer him to his boss, and he takes out his other weapons. Shin continues to make his way to the basement, but he suddenly senses a presence, and he dodges Saba's attack. He asks him about Lu, but Saba explains that he doesn't know, because he's just following orders. He explains that he plans to save 20 million yen before he retires, but he doesn't like working overtime, so he wants to finish things quickly. He prepares to attack Shin from behind, and he tries to fight back, but Saba kicks him away. He notes that he can read Saba's mind, so he knows where to find him, but he doesn't know how to protect himself because he can't see his attacks. Saba knocks him down, but he mentions that he doesn't want to leave work early, so he tells Shin to put up a good fight. We return to Sakamoto, as he starts fighting Kashima, wondering if he's even human. Shishiba and Saragi tell Sakamoto they have to leave, so he bids them farewell, but Kashima blows him away. Saragi wonders if he'll be okay, and Shishiba notes that Kashima is tougher than he thought, so he thinks Sakamoto will struggle against him. But he thinks Sakamoto will come out on top, because he has known him for years. Saba continues to beat Shin up, as he notes that he still hasn't killed him, because Shin is using his powers to avoid fatal attacks. But Saba rushes forward, and he manages to stab Shin, who touches Saba with his bloody hands, but Shin tells him he's in trouble, and he suddenly gets shot, as Heisuke joins the fight. Kashima thinks Sakamoto is pathetic because he just keeps dodging his attacks, but he tells Kashima to leave because the lab is important to Shin. But he explains that his team is taking over the lab for the future of the hitman industry, and he thinks Sakamoto's friends are getting slaughtered by his men. He prepares to fire his mouth cannon, but Sakamoto blocks it with his pencil, causing it to explode, and he explains that he isn't worried about his friends because they can take care of themselves. We return to Shin, as he mentions that Heisuke's timing is perfect, so he thinks he's like a hero, but Shin tells him he hates reading his mind. Seiba realizes that he's dealing with a sniper who wants to stand out, and he thinks Heisuke won't be a threat once he finds him. He sees Seiba hiding, and he fires a bullet, which ricochets and almost hits his head, so he turns invisible and runs away. But Heisuke notes that he can still hear him, so he fires 3 bullets, which almost hit him, but Seiba suddenly appears above him. He launches an invisible rod, which hits his shoulder, and Heisuke falls to the ground. Seiba reveals that his jacket can make anything inside it invisible, and he prepares to finish Heisuke off, but he fires a bullet, which ricochets and hits Seiba, who mentions that he lost his arm. So Heisuke tells him to surrender, but he reveals that he was just joking, and he stabs Heisuke. He kicks the bullets away, as he wonders why Lu's friends are trying to save her, thinking they should just abandon her because she's a nuisance. He calls Heisuke a third-class hitman, but he refuses to give up, and he mentions that his friends consider him a first-class sniper, so he won't let them down. He calls out to Shin, as Paisa gives him a bullet, and he quickly reloads his rifle. He shoots the wall, but the bullet doesn't hit Seiba, so he thinks Heisuke missed his shot. But we see that the bullet hit a sprinkler, which starts spraying water, and Shin appears behind him as he realizes that they can see him because he's wet. Shin takes him down, telling him he isn't a threat if he can see him, and Heisuke tells Shin he was able to read his mind perfectly. But he reveals that he could barely understand what Heisuke was thinking. There's suddenly an explosion, and we cut to Kashima, who reveals that the lab will self-destruct in 20 minutes, because his group has been exposed. But Sakamoto mentions that he can defeat him in 5 minutes, and Kashima charges in, telling Sakamoto he can't win, because his body hinders his movements. Kashima reveals that his body is filled with weapons, because it was created in the lab, and Sakamoto mentions that he also has weapons, but we see that they're just office supplies. Kashima fires his hand cannon, but Sakamoto dodges his attacks, and he takes out his mechanical pencil. Kashima thinks it's useless, but Sakamoto launches its lead at his eye. He mentions that he can defeat Sakamoto with his other eye, but he covers it with a sticker, so Kashima can't see anything. Sakamoto sends him flying, telling him he's a third-class hitman because he's relying on his weapons. But he gets back up, and Sakamoto asks him if he's immortal, so he explains that he doesn't know, but he thinks he can't die. He mentions that his boss is the only one who accepted him, so he's willing to do anything for him, but a train suddenly appears, so they both jump to avoid it. But Kashima uses his wires to restrain Sakamoto, and he starts dragging him away. But Sakamoto manages to recover, and he uses a piece of paper to cut the wires, before throwing Kashima against the wall. We see a train driver, who's bored because he keeps doing the same thing every day, and he hopes something exciting will happen. Sakamoto and Kashima suddenly appear, and they crash into the train. Kashima realizes that the lab is connected to the underground tunnel, and he finally understands why Sakamoto is his boss's favorite, thinking he's the ultimate hitman. Kashima wonders where he's hiding, and Sakamoto suddenly kicks him, realizing he doesn't need to worry about killing him since he's immortal. In a flashback, we see Kashima as he kills a group of men who were messing with a stray cat. Everyone thinks he's crazy, but he still thinks he did the right thing because he killed bad people. His boss suddenly appears, and he kills everyone, telling Kashima he's a great person because he's willing to dirty his hands for the sake of others. His boss draws an X on his mouth, and he mentions that he accepts him for who he is. We return to the present, as Kashima mentions that he wants to help his boss achieve his goal. But an old woman gets on the train, and Sakamoto tells him to stand up because he's in the priority seat. He realizes that Sakamoto has him cornered, and he starts beating him up. Kashima gets blown away as he realizes that Sakamoto's power is absolutely insane, and he starts shooting him, but Sakamoto easily deflects the bullets. He continues to beat him up, but Kashima activates his chest cannon, which causes an explosion. Sakamoto falls off, but he crashes into another train, and he quickly makes his way to the other side, so that he can continue his fight with Kashima. He thinks his boss will be pleased, because he defeated Sakamoto, but the door suddenly opens, and he realizes that Sakamoto is still alive. So he freaks out, and he throws the passengers at Sakamoto, but he saves all of them, and he even gives the boy cookies. He punches Kashima away, and they reach a station, where he delivers the finishing blow. After that, Sakamoto calls Shin, and tells him he was able to defeat the leader, but Shin mentions that there are explosions in the lab. So Sakamoto tells him to hurry, because it will collapse in 15 minutes. We return to the lab, as everyone starts to panic, because they have no idea what's happening. The ceiling falls on Lu, but Shin saves her, and she apologizes for being mean to him. But he tells her it's okay, and he also apologizes for being harsh. Asakura greets Shin, but he doesn't know what to say, and Shin mentions that the lab will collapse in 10 minutes, but Heisuke notes that there are still people inside. Asakura shows everyone a floor plan, and Shin uses his powers to find the people trapped inside. He asks his friends to save them, and he tells Asakura to follow him, as he realizes that Shin is using his powers to help everyone. We see Shishiba and Saragi in the control room, and they see a picture of X, realizing he's the one behind everything. But Shishiba notes that they can't see his face, and Saragi thinks he's a force to be reckoned with. But Shishiba tells her it doesn't matter, because it's their job to get rid of him. We return to Shin, as he mentions that there are 2 people ahead of them, and he notes that there's another one to their left, so Asakura leaves to look for him. Shin sees a man sitting in front of him, but he suddenly freaks out, as he senses a powerful killing intent, which causes him to freeze. The man walks past him, and tells Shin to say hi to Sakamoto for him, but as he turns around, he realizes the man is already gone. We see everyone outside, and Shin joins them, so the scientists ask him if he's okay. He mentions that the lab is gone, but they tell him not to worry, because they still have the research data in their minds. He realizes that they're all grateful to him, and they're glad he made it out alive, so he reminds them that he can read their minds, but they just laugh at him. Asakura tells Sakamoto and his friends to look after Shin, and they promise to take care of him. That evening, we see them eating with Sakamoto's family, and Aya wonders what happened, because they appear to be exhausted, so Shin tells her they went to the museum. He takes Lu's food while she's sleeping, but she becomes upset, telling him she was saving the best for last. They start fighting over the food, but Sakamoto kills them in his mind. The next day, we see that Shin and Lu aren't feeling well, because they still haven't recovered from the fight at the lab. Lu struggles to place pork buns in the steamer, and Shin thinks they're doomed if a hitman attacks them. So Sakamoto decides to take everyone to a bathhouse, but Shin tells him it's a bad idea, because he's so tired that he can't even read minds. But Sakamoto tells him they need to recover, so that they can fight at their best, and Shin thinks it's a high priority mission. Everyone prepares to enter the hot springs, as Shin mentions that he's excited, because it's his first time, but Sakamoto tells him to calm down. We see a man named Yuta, who's running the family business, but we learn that he hates his job, and Sakamoto tells him they need towels. He pays the entrance fee, but Yuta realizes that he looks familiar, and as he gets the towels for them, he checks the wanted poster. He realizes that Sakamoto is the legendary hitman, who has a 1 billion yen bounty on his head, but he tells Yuta to hurry up. We learn that he's also an assassin, but he's a total noob, and he never expected Sakamoto to show up in his bathhouse. He thinks it's his chance to hit it big, but Sakamoto becomes upset, because he's taking too long, so he quickly gives them towels. As Shin and Sakamoto change in the dressing room, Yuta observes them, as he notes that he doesn't want to get stuck running the family business, so he's determined to kill Sakamoto. Everyone starts taking a bath, and Yuta realizes that Sakamoto is defenseless, so he's confident that he can kill him. Shin and Sakamoto decide to try the hyper jet bath, and Shin mentions that it feels amazing, but Sakamoto tells him it's too weak. Yuta continues to observe them, and he prepares to kill them, as Shin realizes that there's a high power button beside him. He decides to try it, but as he presses it, Yuta activates his trap, which sends Shin flying. He crashes to the ground, and he mentions that jet baths are dangerous, but the kids are excited to give it a try. Yuta notes that it's strong enough to destroy a 3-ton truck, but he realizes that Sakamoto is enjoying it. Shin and Sakamoto head to the sauna, but Sakamoto thinks the temperature is too low, so Shin decides to heat the room. But as he pours water into the stones, Yuta activates another one of his traps, which causes the stones to burn. Shin realizes that it's extremely hot, and the room starts burning, but Sakamoto thinks the temperature is perfect. Yuta can't believe it, and Shin tries to withstand the heat, thinking it's nothing compared to hitman training. The kids see a bonfire in the sauna, and they tell their father they want to try it, but he tells them they're still too young. Sakamoto leaves the sauna with Shin, and he decides to try the cold bath, but Yuta freezes the water. Shin thinks the bath is broken, but Sakamoto tells him it's too warm, and the kids start playing on the ice. As Shin and Sakamoto enjoy the waterfall, Yuta adjusts the water pressure, and it blows Shin away, but Sakamoto thinks it's just right. He continues to enjoy his day, as Yuta tries to kill him, but it only makes him feel better. Sakamoto joins the girls, and he lets Shin rest on a chair. He buys an ice cream as the kids bid him farewell, as Yuta realizes that he can't kill him. Sakamoto starts playing ping pong with Lu, as Yuta recalls that his parents always wanted him to run the bathhouse. But he decided to leave the town, because he wanted to become a hitman, and he failed to achieve anything, so he ended up returning to his parents. There are two men that start bullying him, because he failed as a hitman, and he tells them to mind their own business, but one of them knocks him down. They think he's pathetic, and they tell him he'll never get a proper job, but they start mocking the bathhouse, telling him it's in terrible condition. Sakamoto hears them, so he launches the ball at one of them, and he knocks him out. His friend asks Yuta what he did to him, but Sakamoto throws his ice cream stick, which sends the man flying. Yuta realizes that Sakamoto knows he was trying to kill him, but he tells Yuta his bathhouse is amazing, and he leaves with the others. Yuta notes that it's been years since he received a compliment, and he never expected it to come from a legendary hitman. So he calls his father, and tells him he's ready to take over the business, because he realized that he doesn't want to become a hitman. The next day, Sakamoto and his friends head to a restaurant, and Shin mentions that he still feels terrible, because he wasn't able to relax in the bathhouse. Lu shows him 2 colas, and tells him one of them is her special blend. She wants him to guess which one it is without reading her mind, and he drinks one of them, but he realizes it's terrible, and he can't believe he fell for it. And she tells him he'll be paying the bills today, saying family restaurants are fun. She reveals that she didn't always eat outside, because their family chef prepared meals for them, and he asks her if she still talks to people from the mafia. But she reveals that she doesn't like being around them, because she prefers a peaceful life. But a mafia member suddenly points his gun at Shin, and another one tries to shoot Sakamoto, who uses his fork to stop the bullet. Shin takes out the man who's threatening him, and Sakamoto throws the other one on the table. A waitress asks for their order, and he mentions that he wants a melon soda, but the man tells him he's too old for that. Lu asks him if he's Tang, and he tells her it's been a long time since they last met, but she can't believe he's still alive. He tells her their clan doesn't have a leader, and he begs her to return, so that she can lead them. He mentions that Shin and Sakamoto are barbarians, so she shouldn't hang out with them, but she tells him she'll never return to the mafia. He stares at her, but he suddenly has a nosebleed, because he can't resist her cuteness. She cries because her face is covered in blood, so Shin cleans her up, and we learn that Tang served as her clan's advisor, but he kept following her around. Shin reads his mind, and realizes that he's proud, because she knows that he was always protecting her, but Shin thinks he's insane. She tells him she wants to stay with Sakamoto, so Tang realizes that he's standing in the way, and Shin asks him if he wants to fight. But he explains that he'll fight them the mafia way, and he promises to tell Sakamoto about the person who put a bounty on his head if he wins. He mentions that he isn't interested, because he doesn't want them to take Lu, but she accepts the challenge. Shin reminds her that she'll be forced to return to the mafia if they lose, but she's confident that she can lead them to victory. Tang tells them to follow him, and he leads them to an underground room, where he tells them to dress up, because their dirty clothes will attract attention. So they change into their formal attire, and he takes them to a casino, as Lu realizes that their battle won't be a contest of physical strength. His subordinates give them chips worth 30 million yen, and he mentions that he knows they're poor, so he prepared chips for them to use. He explains that they need to make more money than him to win, telling them they'll meet again in 2 hours, and Lu realizes that they need to gamble. Sakamoto tells her not to worry, because they can use Shin's psychic abilities to their advantage, so she thinks they can win. But Shin and Sakamoto reveal that they know nothing about gambling, and she notes that Tang isn't a good fighter, but he's extremely smart, so she thinks they're in trouble. They see the crowd gathering around him, and they're impressed that he already has 90 million yen. Shin can't believe he was able to triple his money in an instant, and he tells them he'll get Lu back, saying he's willing to bet everything on it. Shin thinks they should divide the chips, and he mentions that gambling is just a game of luck, but Lu thinks Tang suggested the game because he knows a trick that can help him win. He explains that gambling isn't a game of chance, because players can win using calculations and psychological warfare. He goes all in and wins the game, telling Sakamoto and his friends to show him what they can do. Shin knows nothing about gambling, but he decides to give it a try and figure things out as he plays. But the other players realize he's a total noob, and they think they can destroy him, so he's determined to prove them wrong. The game begins, and they make their move, but he has no idea what's happening. Lu sees him, and she immediately realizes that he doesn't know how to play, so they start arguing. He drops his cards, and the other players see them, so they realize he has a good hand, but they think he'll back out if they bluff. So they tell him he'll never win with his cards, but he knows that they're bluffing, so he goes all in and wins 12 million yen. Sakamoto plays roulette, and he places his chips on red. The man in charge of the game thinks he'll never win because he placed a magnet in the roulette so he can control where the ball will land. It's about to land on black, so he thinks it's all over for Sakamoto, but he launches one of his chips to keep the roulette spinning and manages to win the game. Tang's subordinate thinks Sakamoto and his friends are cheating because they keep winning, but Tang tells him not to interfere because he already expected them to play dirty. He uses his genius intellect to win at blackjack, and his subordinates think he's amazing because he can memorize the cards and predict when the next card will be a 10. In a flashback, we see Tang getting beat up by his clanmates because they think he's too weak to be in their clan. But Lu suddenly attacks one of them, so they run away, and she asks him if he's okay. She realizes that he's one of her relatives, and she asks him why he let the others beat him up, so he explains that he allowed them to win so that they would get into trouble after they're done with him. He realizes that he just came up with a flimsy excuse, but she thinks he's brilliant, and she tells him his brain is his greatest weapon. He notes that it's the first time he has felt accepted in his life, and he wants to stand by her side, so he decides to do his best to make it to the top until he finally becomes the brain of the clan. We return to the present, as Tang realizes that he's tied with Sakamoto's team, and he tells them they need to break the tie. His subordinate suggests shooting them to death, but Tang tells him to back off and suggests playing a game of poker. But Sakamoto reveals that he doesn't know the rules, so they decide to play an easier game instead. Tang explains that the team with the Joker at the end loses, and Shin thinks they'll win because he can read Tang's mind. But he sees Lu crying, so he realizes that she has the Joker, and Tang tells her he won't go easy on her. He uses her expression to find the Joker, but he takes it because he wants her to be happy. He tells Shin to take a card from his hand, and he tries to read his mind, but Tang knows about his powers, and he wonders how far Shin can read into his thoughts. He realizes that Tang's mind is filled with complex calculations, which overwhelms his brain, and he collapses, as Tang notes that his plan worked. Tang's subordinate takes the Joker, and he tells Sakamoto to pick a card. He gets the Joker, but he immediately returns it and takes another card. But Tang knows that he cheated, so he warns him that he's out of the game if he does it again. The game continues, and we see that Sakamoto and Tang are the only ones left. Sakamoto has the Joker, and Tang tells him his poker face is impressive, but he knows where to find the Joker, so he prepares to take the other card. But Sakamoto stops him, and he struggles to pull it out, as Sakamoto instantly switches his cards. Tang pulls out the card, but he realizes that he got the Joker, and his subordinates suddenly stop the game, as one of them tells him they don't like the way he does things. They all call him a nerd, and he thinks it's all over for him, but Sakamoto tells him it's his chance to impress Lu. He recalls how she told him that his mind is his greatest weapon, and he thinks he can still win if he outsmarts everyone. He tells Sakamoto not to worry, because he already predicted that his subordinates would betray him, and he mentions that their guns will explode if they try to use them. So they check their guns, but Sakamoto suddenly attacks them, and he uses the billiard balls to knock them out. One of them tries to escape, but Tang threatens to shoot him, telling him he was just bluffing. He tells Sakamoto he won the fight, saying he doesn't deserve to be with Lu because he put her in harm's way. But Sakamoto mentions that he doesn't know what Tang deserves, and he explains that he knows what it's like to protect those who are important to him. After that, Tang starts working for Sakamoto, and he tells everyone that X was the one who placed a bounty on Sakamoto's head. But they tell him they already know that, and Lu asks him if he knows X's real name, so he reveals that nobody knows anything about him. They think his information isn't useful, but he tells them about a prison in Southeast Asia where 4 inmates on death row were killed and their faces were burned off. An X was painted on the wall, so everyone realizes that he was behind it, but Tang tells them about the recent cases in Japan where people have been brutally murdered. He reveals that the methods used to kill them resemble those of the 4 inmates, who are supposed to be dead, so he thinks they faked their deaths and made their way to Japan. We see the 4 inmates in a restaurant as one of them, named Donpu, realizes that everyone's talking about them. She wonders what X wants them to do, and the convict named Saw thinks they should relax until he gives them orders. Another inmate named Apato complains about his burger having pickles, but the brute named Minimus crushes it with his hand and eats it. Kashima joins them, and he gives them a list of their targets. He mentions that everyone on the list is dangerous to their organization, but Saw can't believe Sakamoto is included because he looks pathetic. Kashima warns everyone not to underestimate their targets because they might lose their lives. But Minimus becomes upset hearing this, and he crushes his table, telling Kashima they'll eliminate their targets within a month. We return to Tang as he receives his paycheck, and he tells Sakamoto and his friends to escape because the convicts will hunt them down. But Sakamoto thinks they'll be able to tell him about X, and his friends decide to take them on. Tang thinks they're insane, and he tells them the convicts are extremely dangerous, but Sakamoto notes that it's exactly why he needs to take them down. We see a man running away from Donpu, but he trips and falls to the ground, so she catches up to him, and he begs her to let him go. She realizes that he's afraid, and she hugs him, telling him she likes him since he's cute, but she suddenly stabs him to death. He falls to the ground, and she realizes that he's ugly, but she thinks he looked cute when he knew he was about to die. We learn that she gets excited whenever she sees people fearing for their lives, but she ends up killing them because she can't control herself. We see a hitman as he prepares for his next job, but Apato suddenly appears and uses his strings to cut him into pieces. He organizes the hitman's remains and notes that it's what's on the inside that counts, but he sees a book missing in the bookshelf and he starts to lose it. So he rushes to a nearby bookstore and buys the book that's missing, thinking it looks better now that the bookshelf is complete. Minimus crushes his victim and turns him into a ball, but he mentions that he's bored, so he looks forward to meeting his S-rank targets. Saw realizes that the others have already taken out some of the targets, and he can't believe they're rushing things because they just escaped from prison. He thinks it's a waste to kill their targets right away, and we learn that he enjoys looking into his victims before he takes them out, because it makes killing them more exciting. We see Sakamoto with his friends, and he notes that they need to gather intel on the enemy, so he visits the video rental store, telling the shopkeeper he needs to learn about the death row inmates. He tells Sakamoto to check the psycho-horror section, and Shin takes the videos about their recent murders, while the shopkeeper mentions that it's worth over 1 million yen, so Sakamoto puts it on his card. Meanwhile, we see the members of the order in a trailer, as Saragi realizes that she missed the turn, so she immediately starts reversing. Shishiba tells her she can't just reverse on the highway, and Takamura hits his head, so Hyo tells her to drive carefully, because they have a senior on board. She apologizes for being reckless, and notes that Shishiba made her drive, but he just tells her to focus on driving. Hyo notes that he wants to get rid of the convicts, since they're causing trouble, and Shishiba tells Saragi to use her indicator, because she keeps changing lanes. He notes that the convicts are crazed murderers, but they're just amateurs, so he wonders why X decided to work with them. But she explains that they're dangerous, because they have no morals, so they can kill people without feeling sorry for them. We see a fly in the trailer, and it approaches Takamura, but it activates his reflexes, so everyone panics and gets down. He suddenly takes out his sword, and cuts the trailer in half, so everyone comments that he's just like the convicts, because he's also a killer with no brakes. Nagumo notes that there are 4 convicts, and everyone thinks they can take them on, because they outnumber them. We return to Sakamoto and his friends as they watch the movies together, but Shin realizes that Sakamoto is sleeping, and Lu mentions that the films aren't scary. After that, we see Heisuke aiming at Sakamoto, and he starts shooting him, but Sakamoto dodges his bullets and catches one of them. Heisuke is impressed, and notes that Sakamoto has caught 99 shots in a row, but he mentions that he missed one. He tells Heisuke to shoot him again, but Shin suddenly arrives, and tells Sakamoto that he'll die no matter how hard he trains. Shin tries to stab him, but he stops the attack, and he asks Nagumo what he wants. So he removes his disguise, and he knows that Sakamoto looked into the death row inmates, but he tells him to stay out of it, because the order is already hunting them down. But Sakamoto notes that he can't just wait around, and he mentions that he wants to find X before the order does, so Nagumo thinks he wants to take them alive. But he tells Sakamoto that they consider him a B-rank target, and Nagumo reveals that they have placed him at S rank, so Sakamoto realizes they're looking down on him. We see Shin and Lu in a home improvement store, where Lu sees a kitten, and she's amazed by how cute it is. Shin reminds her that they need to buy the items they need to repair the shop, and he notes that he's been seeing holes in the wall lately. But she wants to stay with the kitten, so he tells her the convicts are looking for them, reminding her that they're extremely dangerous. She notes that Sakamoto can defeat them, so there's nothing to worry about, but Shin mentions that they need to get stronger, because they're just a burden to him. The shopkeeper shows him a dog, and he tells her he's in a hurry, but he can't resist its cuteness, so he starts playing with it. But it suddenly becomes agitated, and he realizes that the other pets are also reacting. They see Saw in the store, and he mocks the animals for being restless, so Lu asks him who he is. He reveals that he used to be in the military, and he has seen people die because they made the wrong choice, thinking it's a shame since everyone deserves a dramatic ending. He opens his bag, and takes out his weapon, as he notes that he'll kill Sakamoto's friends to make him depressed. He suddenly attacks Shin with his axe, and he mentions that he doesn't want to waste his time on side characters, because they aren't strong enough to keep him entertained. The civilians run away, while Shin immediately recovers, and notes that Saw is one of the convicts. He's impressed that Shin is still alive, because he used a crowbar to block at the last second, and Saw reveals that he looked into his targets. So he knows that Lu is rank C, while Shin is classified as a D-rank target, but he isn't happy hearing this, because his rank is lower than Lu's. Saw reveals that D is the second lowest rank, so Shin is depressed, but Saw mentions that he'll give him a good ending. Shin charges in, and Saw prepares to cut him in half, but he reads his mind and dodges his attack. He kicks his head, and tells Saw to fix his ranking after he beats him up, calling him a psycho, but Saw tells Shin to stop treating him like he's a murderer. Lu reminds him that he's killed countless people, but he explains that his victims appreciated it, because he gave them a beautiful ending. He mentions that life is boring, so he wants to help everyone by giving them the best ending possible, and Shin tries to read his mind, but he realizes that his thoughts are filled with murder. He throws his axe to attack Shin and Lu, and tells them to keep up with him, but Shin realizes that they're no match for him, so he runs away with Lu. They struggle to dodge his attacks, and Shin looks for something they can use as a weapon, but he realizes that the axe is about to hit Lu. So he pushes her to safety, but he ends up getting hit, and Saw knows that he can't read his mind, because killing them is all he can think about. Lu shoots him with a nail gun, and tells him to get away from Shin, so he walks towards her, but Shin suddenly gets back up, and burns him with his makeshift flamethrower. But it doesn't work, so they realize that he's incredibly tough, and he hits a gas tank, causing it to explode. Shin gets back up, and he realizes that he's still alive, because Lu saved him, so he thinks she got hurt because he's weak. Meanwhile, Sakamoto wonders why Shin and Lu haven't returned yet, but Heisuke thinks they'll be fine, because he knows that Shin is a skilled hitman. Sakamoto notes that he has potential, but he still lacks experience, and he needs to fight for his life to reach his potential. We return to Shin, as Saw mocks him for being weak, telling him his ability is amazing, but it's too bad that it's been wasted on him. Saw mentions that he'll kill Sakamoto's family after he kills him and Lu, and he mentions that he's interested in Sakamoto, because killing him after he loses his family will serve as the perfect ending. Shin is upset hearing this, and Saw prepares to finish him off, but he suddenly awakens his new power. His eyes turn blue, as he thinks about Sakamoto, and Saw tries to kill him, but he suddenly dodges the attack. Saw is confused, wondering why Shin isn't acting like his usual self, and he prepares to take another swing, but Shin stops him before he can move his hand. He reveals that he can now see the future, and he counters with a barrage of attacks, which knocks Saw down. He wonders what happened to Shin, and he tries to cut his head off, but Shin punches his neck as he realizes that Shin can read his moves. He struggles to hit him as Shin uses his eyes to see the future, and he counters with a devastating blow. He thanks Saw for helping him awaken his new power, but notes that he won't let him hurt the people he cares about, so he'll do anything it takes to defeat him. We go back to when Tang went to the store, and he tells Shin that when a person thinks about moving, his brain has already decided to move. Sakamoto knows that Tang is talking about the subconscious, and Lu notes that her subconscious decides to punch a split second before her body reacts. But he notes that a split second could mean the difference between life and death, and Tang tells Shin that he should learn to read his opponent's subconscious thoughts. We return to the present, as Shin rushes forward, and continues to beat Saw up. But he suddenly reaches his limit, as he realizes that he isn't used to his new power yet, and Saw catches him, so he thinks it's all over for him. But Lu suddenly appears, and she sends Saw flying, telling him not to mess with her family, but Shin realizes that she's acting strange. He sees a bottle of ethanol, and realizes that she had drunk it while he was fighting, but he wonders why she isn't as emotional as usual. She tells Saw not to look down on the mafia, so Shin realizes that she's a mafia drunk, and Saw throws his axe at her. But she grabs the rope and throws it back at him, so he jumps away, but he realizes that she's gone, and she suddenly kicks his head. She takes him down, and threatens to make him suffer for all the people he killed, but he tells her to let him go. So she stabs his arm, causing him to scream in pain, and she tells him he isn't allowed to talk. He asks her to spare him, promising not to bother her family again, but she wonders if he ever listened to his victims who begged for their lives. So he panics and starts running away, and she chases after him, as he thinks that bad endings are only fun when they happen to other people. But Shin overhears his thoughts, and he appears above him, smashing him to the ground. We see Shishiba and Saragi in a diner, as they discuss that one of the convicts has already been defeated, so Saragi is worried that she won't be able to kill anyone. Shishiba receives a call from Igumo, who mentions that he's approaching his target, so Shishiba tells Saragi that they can take it easy, because their help isn't needed. But she quickly eats her food, so that she can hunt down her target, and she tells him he can have her leftovers. He tells her to be careful, but she quickly walks away, and he notes that he's full, so he can't finish her leftovers, but he can't believe she has onions in her food. We return to Shin and Lu, who both fall asleep from exhaustion, and Saw uses the chance to escape. He sees a taxi, so he tells the driver to take him to the airport. The driver mentions that he still has a passenger, but Saw threatens to kill him, so he allows him to get in the car. He thinks about stealing money and taking it easy for a while, but we see that the other passenger is Hyo, who tells him he's already reached his destination, and he ends up finishing him off. Shin wakes Lu up, and he tells her that Saw has escaped, so he tries to look for him, but he suddenly gets a headache, as he realizes that it's an after effect of his new ability. But a group suddenly arrives, and their leader tells him that Saw is dead, but she's angry that he caused a mess. He recognizes them as floaters, and Lu wonders what they are, so he explains that they're the JAA's cleanup squad, and they fix the place after the hitmen complete their missions. But they start complaining about their jobs, so she realizes that they're degenerates, and he reveals that most of them are working part-time while training to be hitmen. He can't believe she got drunk on ethanol, but she reminds him that they still need to go shopping, so he realizes that they need to get back to the store. Meanwhile, we see Saragi as she heads to a shrine, where she rings the bell, and she prays that she'll be able to kill the convicts. But Donpu suddenly appears behind her, and attacks her with her spikes, wondering why people always close their eyes when they pray. We see that Saragi used a coin to block her attack, and she's glad that her prayer has been answered, asking Donpu if she knows how the Japanese pray to the gods. Saragi grabs onto her, and smashes her to the ground, as she explains that the Japanese bow when they pray, but she notes that Donpu is supposed to make an offering before that. She gets back up, and tells Saragi she'll make her the cutest one of all, but she explains that she needs Donpu to die in the name of the order. She attacks with her spikes again, and tells Saragi she has no right to judge her, because she's also a killer. But she explains that she isn't judging Donpu, and notes that she just sees her as an insect she needs to kill for the JAA. She dodges Donpu's attacks, but she takes Saragi's briefcase and throws it away, thinking it must be her weapon since it's heavy. Donpu continues her assault, thinking Saragi doesn't stand a chance without her weapon, but she analyzes the situation and realizes that Donpu is keeping most of her spikes in her torso. Saragi wonders what she should do, because she needs to keep her distance, and she reaches the bell, so Donpu thinks she wants to pray to the gods again. But she drops the bell and kicks it towards Donpu, so she gets blown away. She thinks Saragi will be punished by the gods because she kicked the bell in the shrine, but she explains that it will never happen because the gods are kind. She reads her fortune, and a stick mentions that she'll have good luck, but Donpu suddenly attacks her from behind. She manages to stab her hand, but Saragi walks forward and grabs onto Donpu's hand, as she mentions that the gods are too kind because they allowed murderers to exist. But she notes that it's the reason why the order needs to hunt them down, and she prepares to take her out. In a flashback, we learn that Donpu's love has always been one-sided because she demands undying devotion from everyone she loves. So she wants them to only think about her, and she kills them whenever she feels jealous. We learn that she gets turned on when someone is afraid because it reveals their true selves, and they only think about her during their last moments. But she notes that it feels hollow because they stop thinking about her as soon as they die. We return to the present as Saragi kicks Donpu away and starts beating her up. Donpu mentions that all she ever did was love people, so she thinks she doesn't deserve to be punished, telling Saragi she just wants to be loved. But Saragi takes her briefcase, and it transforms into her weapon as she mentions that they're both killers. She explains that it's because of people like Donpu that she has a reason to live each day, so she thanks her for giving her life purpose, telling her she loves her. Donpu is surprised hearing this, but Saragi activates her buzzsaw and uses it to finish her off. We see Heisuke in a tower, and we learn that he's looking for the convicts, thinking he might be able to find them from a distance since they look weird. He uses a telescope to look around the city, as he notes that he enjoys the view because it's how Pisces sees the world. Meanwhile, Kashima tells X that 2 of the convicts have been killed, but things are still going according to plan, so they can move to the next phase. But Apato suddenly appears, and he threatens Kashima with his strings, asking him what he's up to. He tries to act dumb, but Apato doesn't believe him, and he notes that he's grateful since Kashima helped him escape from prison, but he doesn't want to be used by him. He cuts him into pieces, and he mentions that he wants to understand people by seeing what's inside them. But after he leaves, we see that Kashima is still alive, and he realizes that Apato is dangerous, so he thinks about getting rid of him. But X tells Kashima to let the convicts do as they wish, because it will give them an advantage over the JAA. Minimus heads to Sakamoto's store, where he sees Aya, but she thinks he's a customer, so she asks him what he needs. We see Sakamoto holding Shin in place, as a therapist named Mia performs acupuncture on him, telling him to stop acting like a baby. After that, she tells Sakamoto she barely recognized him since he put on weight, and she notes that she doesn't advertise for ex-hitman, but he knows that she's the only one who can help Shin. Luz starts playing with the needles and asks him if it hurts, but he mentions that it feels good, so he thinks Mia knows what she's doing. Sakamoto reveals that she's famous among hitmen, and they call her the Hand of God because she can heal almost any wound. Shin calls her an old hag and wonders how long he has to stay that way, but she tells him to stop being rude. She reveals that she's 98 years old and tells him to stay there for the rest of the day, but he isn't happy hearing this. She explains that his new ability takes a toll on his body, so he can only use it for 5 minutes a day, and she warns him that he might die if he goes beyond the time limit. Lou tells her she feels dizzy, so Mia checks her body and realizes that she needs to eliminate the toxins. So she gives her a soup, and after Lou drinks it, she mentions that she feels better already, but Shin knows that she just has a hangover. Mia gives Sakamoto a checkup, and she realizes that he wants to beat people up because he felt pain when she touched his pressure point for anger. She knows that he's angry because his friends were attacked, but she warns him not to rush things and reveals that he's only 30% as strong as he used to be. She notes that the 5-year break put a huge gap between him and Nagumo, but he tells her it doesn't matter because he'll still take down his targets. He's about to leave, but she suddenly elbows him and explains that she aimed for a special pressure point. We see that he's in pain, but he thanks her for her help and asks her to take care of his friends for him. We return to Minimus, as he asks Aya where her husband is, so she explains that he left to meet his therapist. But Minimus thinks she's lying, so he destroys the cash register and tears the counter with his bare hands. He starts strangling her, threatening to kill her if she doesn't tell him where her husband is, but she suddenly breaks his arm and stabs him in the neck. He falls to his knees, as he wonders what's happening, so Nagumo removes his disguise and reveals the knife was just a toy. He recognizes Nagumo as an S-rank target, and he looks forward to killing him, but Nagumo suddenly appears behind him, so he quickly takes a step back. Nagumo reveals that he's on duty because Sakamoto asked him to watch the store while he's away, and he prepares to get serious. Meanwhile, Heisuke is amazed as he sees a glass floor, and as he looks below him, he sees Apato talking to a man, asking him what he's thinking about. The man is confused hearing this, but Apato prepares to take him out because he wants to see what's inside him. Heisuke is glad that he has finally found his target, and he takes a shot, but Apato manages to block his bullet. So Heisuke freaks out, and Apato suddenly jumps up as he starts attacking Heisuke, who struggles to dodge his strings. He enters the tower, as Paisa gives Heisuke a tip, so he fires his rifle, but Apato suddenly destroys it. He explains that he likes strings because he thinks they connect people, and he restrains Heisuke as he notes that he can sense something beautiful inside him. But Heisuke isn't worried because someone's coming to save him, and Sakamoto suddenly appears. He punches Apato away and apologizes for making Heisuke wait, but he's just glad that Sakamoto arrived on time. We learn that he saw him outside, and he decided to shoot him because he knew that Sakamoto would figure out what was happening. Apato gets back up, and he thinks Sakamoto might be able to understand him because he punches super hard. We return to Minimus, as he reveals that he has killed 432 people, but it still hasn't satisfied his boredom, and he thinks killing Nagumo might change that. He attacks him, but Nagumo disappears and takes his phone, and he starts checking his browser history. So Minimus becomes angry and destroys everything as he tries to kill Nagumo. But he suddenly disappears again, so Minimus starts looking for him, and we see that he has disguised himself as Minimus's reflection. He grabs onto him and starts strangling him, as Minimus realizes that he's powerful despite his size, and Nagumo checks his belongings, realizing he doesn't have any actual info. So he throws him away, and takes out his 6-function knife, telling Minimus he'll let him choose how he wants to die. He mentions that his weapon is versatile, so he wants to keep changing the way he kills his victims, and he tells Minimus to pick a number from 1 to 6. But he tells Nagumo not to mess with him, and he tries to punch him again, so Nagumo jumps away, and notes that his die will decide for them. But it suddenly disappears, and Minimus realizes it's in his mouth. Nagumo sees that it's a 3, so he grabs onto his head and cuts it off, explaining that the number 3 is a giant can opener. But he realizes that he made a mess, so he thinks Sakamoto won't be happy. At the tower, Sakamoto blocks Apato's strings, but he gets blown away, and Apato can't believe he can move well despite his weight. He realizes that he can't return to his prime form, and he thinks it must be because of Mia, wondering what she did to his body. Apato wraps his strings around Sakamoto's leg, but he realizes that he can't cut it, and he pulls Sakamoto towards him. But he grabs onto a model and throws it at Apato, who catches it with his strings. Sakamoto realizes that he's a worthy opponent, but he's angry that Sakamoto ruined the display, and he quickly rearranges them. Sakamoto thinks it's his chance to return to his prime form, and he exercises while Apato is busy, but he realizes that he still hasn't lost weight. Apato wraps his strings around Sakamoto again, but he jumps away, and he realizes that he can't win barehanded, so he checks to see if he has any weapons. But Apato thinks he's disgusting because his pockets are dirty, so he thinks they'll never understand each other. We cut to Mia, as she tells Sakamoto's friends that he's nowhere near as good as he used to be, since his weight makes it hard for him to move like he used to. Shin thinks it won't be a problem since he can slim down, but she mentions that he needs to get used to his new body weight. So she hit his pressure point to prevent him from slimming down, because it will help him realize that he has more than enough power with his current weight. Apato continues to attack Sakamoto, and he notes that they'll never get along because Sakamoto can't take care of his surroundings. He explains that he isn't careless, but Apato tells him to look at his slippers, and he realizes that it's broken. Apato surrounds him with his strings, but he suddenly realizes why Mia doesn't want him to slim down, so he rushes forward and sends Apato flying. He joins him in the elevator, as he mentions that it's time for his counterattack, and they fall out of the elevator as Sakamoto starts beating him up. They're able to land safely, and he mentions that he feels better than ever, but Apato praises him, thinking Sakamoto might be the first person to understand him, but he notes that he doesn't have time to listen to him. Shoshiba realizes that Saragi destroyed the shrine, so he thinks the gods will be angry at her, but she reminds him that he didn't do anything to help her. He receives a call from Megumo, and we see that the floaters are cleaning the store, as he reveals that the convicts were also on their hit list. So Shoshiba realizes that X wanted them to kill each other in the end, and Nagumo thinks they were meant to drag it out, because X is up to something. We return to Sakamoto, as Apato attacks him with his strings, but he blocks them with a metal bar, and punches Apato away. He asks Sakamoto if he remembers the first time he connected with the world, but he wonders what Apato is talking about, so he decides to tell him about his past. In a flashback, we see that Apato didn't get along with the other kids, and his mother didn't care about him. But his father was kind to him, and we learn that he was always busy at work, so they didn't always see each other. He tells Apato that it's what's inside people that matters, and he thinks Apato will make friends since he's a good boy, but he tells him he needs practice, so he gives him a doll to play with. Apato approaches the other kids and asks them if he can play with them, but they call him a creep, so he goes back to his room, wondering why nobody wants to play with him. He stabs his doll and tears it apart, and the other kids continue to reject him because they think he's a weirdo. He sees a cat in the park and kills it in his room, but his father realizes what he has done. So he hugs him, telling him everything will be okay because they'll visit a doctor together. The doctor checks Apato's brain and notes that there's nothing wrong with him, but his father can't believe it because he's convinced that his son is mentally ill. He becomes angry and grabs onto the doctor, asking him if his son was born a monster, so Apato tries to stop him. But his father tells him to stay away because he also finds him creepy. Apato is upset hearing this, and he ends up losing it, so he kills his father, telling him he isn't a monster. He checks his father's brain and tells him they aren't so different because they're just the same on the inside, and he finally feels connected to everyone since his brain is just like everyone else's. We return to the present as Apato explains that he confirms his connection with others by seeing what's inside them, so he wants to cut Sakamoto into pieces. But he tells Apato he's wrong because he loses his connection as soon as he kills a person, telling him he needs to change his ways. But he's upset hearing this, and he tells Sakamoto that he can't dismiss his way of life as he prepares another attack. His strings damage the tower, and it's about to fall, so Heisuke starts to panic. Sakamoto grabs the power lines and stops the tower from falling, but Apato prepares to kill him. He sees Takamura below them, and he cuts the concrete at the base of the tower, causing it to stop falling, but everyone sees that it's now crooked. Sakamoto realizes that he no longer needs to hold onto the tower, and he suddenly disappears, so Apato looks around. But Sakamoto punches him from the side and throws him to the sky before hitting him with a ladder. He combines his strings and turns them into a whip, which he uses to attack Sakamoto, but he takes a disc and throws it at Apato, cutting his whip into pieces. Sakamoto kicks him away, and he's about to fall to his death, as he wonders why he doesn't fit in this world, because he's just like everyone else. But Sakamoto saves him, telling him he can still change his ways, so he doesn't want him to die. He spins him around and smashes him against the tower, causing him to pass out. Sakamoto drags him to Mia's clinic, where he regains consciousness, and he wonders what happened to him. But Shin reads his thoughts, so he realizes that Apato is awake, telling him to stop pretending that he's asleep. So he jumps away and asks everyone what they want from him, thinking they want to use him, but he wonders why they didn't kill him. So they explain that they don't hold a grudge against him, and they just need info about the person who hired him. Heisuke tells him he's the only person they can count on, but he notes that he could have killed them after he woke up, so Sakamoto mentions that they wanted to give him a chance to change his ways. He threatens to slam Apato into the tower again if he doesn't behave, but Shin tells him he'd be dead if Sakamoto didn't show him mercy, so he should consider himself lucky. He's glad that they're treating him like a normal person, so he decides to cooperate, and he tells them that he met a person who looked like a deer. Sakamoto knows that he's talking about Kashima, and he asks Apato where he met him, so he reveals he infiltrated his hotel room and cut him into pieces. But he left one of his strings there and listened in for a while, so he heard X telling Kashima that it's time to destroy the JAA's base of operations, since the Order is busy dealing with the convicts. Apato mentions that he doesn't know anything about their plan, but he tells everyone not to get involved because it's too dangerous. Shin thinks X is insane, and he wonders what they should do, so Sakamoto notes that they should head to the JAA. We learn that the JAA has over 1,000 members, and 400 of them are professional hitmen, making it the largest assassin organization in Japan. The workers in the Kanto branch provide mission support to the assassins, and they also handle internal affairs, so they're considered the beating heart of the organization. We see X with a man named Gaku outside the Kanto branch, and they park their bike, but a guard tells them that he needs to see their employee ID. Gaku mentions that they don't work for the JAA, so the guard pulls out his gun, explaining that he's just following the rules. Gaku asks X if he has a JAA license, but he explains that he threw it away because he didn't like his picture, so Gaku gets closer to the guard and suddenly kills him with a single hit. They prepare to enter the Kanto branch, as X mentions that he's nervous since he hasn't been there for ages, and Gaku understands how he feels. But X explains that their performance suffers when they're nervous because they become too self-conscious about their movements. So he tells Gaku to relax and notes that they're one step closer to getting justice. They enter through the front door, but the guards don't recognize them, so they ask for their ID, but X suddenly cuts them down. He orders Gaku to take care of everything, and he's surprised that he'll be doing everything alone, but X just tells him to be careful before leaving. Everyone hears the alarm, and they realize that there are intruders in the building, but they don't care, because they think the guards can handle the situation. But Gaku sends a man flying on the 3rd floor, and the workers can't believe he was able to make it up. They prepare to take him on, but he crushes all of them in an instant, and he starts looking for the restroom. But as he leaves the office, a group of men opens fire, so he blocks their bullets and blows their heads off. He sees a hitman named Takabe, who thinks he should have skipped work today, but another hitman bursts through the wall and punches Gaku away. He tells Takabe to pull himself together, because they need to set an example for their juniors, but Gaku suddenly blasts him with his weapon. He manages to survive it, but Gaku smashes his head and sends him crashing into a car in the parking lot. We see a group of hitmen waiting for the elevator, and X suddenly appears, so they take out their weapons. But one of them, named Yuta, suddenly shoots down the others, and he calls X his boss. We learn that he's been working as X's spy for a year, and he notes that he enjoys staying at the JAA because he receives a decent salary and the work environment is peaceful. X asks him if he made friends, so he reveals that he's been hanging out with the workers on the 3rd floor, and he thinks they're already dead, but he doesn't care. He asks X if they should execute their plan, so he notes that it's time to reset the JAA and create a new order for the world. Meanwhile, Takamura approaches the building, and X's thugs tell him to leave if he doesn't want to die, but he instantly cuts them into pieces. Gaku senses a powerful presence, and Takamura appears before him as he wonders why an old man is giving him goosebumps. He tries to crush him, but Takamura easily blocks his attack and slices everything around him in half. Gaku realizes that his fingers and ear have been cut off, and he tries to attack again, but Takamura destroys his weapon, so he realizes that he doesn't stand a chance. Takamura slashes Gaku, and his attack causes a massive explosion, which X hears from a distance. He realizes that the ghost of JAA is still alive, and he knows that Takamura is a major threat, so he mentions that they need to hurry. Sakamoto suddenly arrives with his friends, and he recognizes X as Izuki, asking him how he's still alive. He's disappointed that Sakamoto is no longer in shape, calling him his old friend, and Shin can't believe they know each other. X tells Sakamoto to stop calling him Izuki because he no longer goes by that name, and Sakamoto wonders why he placed a bounty on his head. But X suddenly stabs him, and Yuta prepares to shoot Shin, but Apato saves him, telling Yuta he won't let him sever his connections. So X cuts his arm off, and Yuta tries to stab Shin, but Sakamoto kicks him away. X can't believe he's still alive, and he tells his friends to stay back while he deals with X. Yuta volunteers to deal with him, but X mentions that he's enjoying his reunion with Sakamoto, who tries to stab him from behind, but X dodges and shatters his pen. He notes that Sakamoto's appearance reminds him of his younger self, and he notes that he can't stand it because he remembers how naive he was. He sends Sakamoto flying and reminds him that they were taught to embody clear killing intent as hitmen, revealing that after he graduated, he realized that killing requires no emotion. Shin rushes at him, but X dodges his attack and prepares to cut him down, so Sakamoto saves him. He apologizes for being a burden, but X tells him he should just take his own life, telling Sakamoto he can't win because his friends are weak. X tells him to fight with his full power, and he notes that he's no longer a hitman, but X notes that he'll keep killing if Sakamoto lets him live, threatening to kill his daughter if he doesn't stop him. So he becomes angry, and X senses his threatening aura as he charges in with everything he has. He starts attacking X, who struggles to keep up with his movements, and he realizes that Sakamoto is back to being the legendary hitman. X tells him not to screw up this time, and he prepares to clash with him again, but Shin calls out to him, and he remembers his family and friends. Gaku suddenly interrupts the fight, and X notes that he was just about to have fun, but Gaku tells him about Takamura, who suddenly appears before them. Yuta tries to shoot him, but he cuts the bullet in half, so Yuta gets behind him and prepares to shoot him up close, but Takamura stabs him before he can pull the trigger. Gaku charges at him, so Takamura slices his arm off, but he mentions that he doesn't need it, and he kicks it towards Takamura, who blocks it with his sword. Gaku tries to attack again, but X stops him, and Takamura almost hits them with a devastating attack. They decide to retreat, so Sakamoto chases after them, and he trades blows with X, who manages to overpower him. He starts running away, but Takamura suddenly appears behind him, and he realizes that he's wide open, but Yuta stops Takamura and activates his detonator, causing his body to explode. Sakamoto and his friends survive the explosion, and X stares at them, but he just starts muttering, and Gaku tells him they should go. So they walk away, and Shin can't believe they just left like nothing happened. We learn that 176 people were killed during the attack, while Takamura went missing, and the JAA has already lost more than half of their hitmen because of X. A few days later, we see Sakamoto in a hospital, where he watches the news about the Leaning Tower of Tokyo, which has become a new tourist attraction. Shin bought him a basket of fruits, but he's too ashamed to face him because he was a burden during the last fight. Hyo and Nagumo visit Sakamoto, who mentions that Azuki is X, and Nagumo can't believe it because he thought Sakamoto had already killed him. Hyo has no idea who they're talking about, so Nagumo reveals that Azuki was their classmate, but Hyo wonders why he's never heard of him. He thanks Sakamoto for the info and prepares to leave, but Sakamoto mentions that he knows something important, offering to give it to the order if they tell him what they know about X. Hyo tries to crush him, but he gets off his bed, and Hyo notes that they don't work with retired hitmen, telling him he might lose his family if he gets involved. But he mentions that he'll be fine, so Hyo decides to put him in his place, and he delivers a powerful punch, which sends him crashing through the walls. Hyo tells him it's just a matter of time before he dies, but he notes that he can't back down since he's a father, telling Hyo he must protect the people who are important to him. Shin lunges at Hyo, who tries to kick him, but he dodges and activates the MRI machine, while Sakamoto throws metal rods at it. Hyo is trapped by the magnetic force, and Sakamoto asks him what he knows about X, explaining that he needs to protect his family. So Hyo reveals that he isn't allowed to leak classified information, but he tells Sakamoto he can find information about X in the JCC databank. So he thanks Hyo for the tip and leaves, but he's angry that Sakamoto didn't give him the info he promised, and Nagumo tells him he's as gullible as always. He fixes the room and apologizes for the mess he caused, before walking away with the machine, and Sakamoto notes that he's always been a good person at heart. He sees the fruits Shin is carrying, so he admits that he wanted to give them to him, but he was too ashamed to face him since he's a burden. Sakamoto notes that he almost lost it when X mentioned Hana, and he thanks Shin for bringing him back to his senses, telling him he's always helping him. But we learn that Shin is just reading his mind, and he asks him why he doesn't just say it out loud. We see Shishiba and Saragi in the Kanto branch, where they realize that 40% of the building has been destroyed, so the JAA's business is starting to suffer. Shishiba notes that the upper management has decided to revise the company's regulations, and they're looking for people to replace the employees they lost. But he realizes that Saragi isn't listening, so he just tells her they should gather the other members of the order to prepare for their next move. Meanwhile, we see Kashima stitching Gaku's arm back in place, and he notes that the nerve suture is complete, so his arm will start to recover slowly. Gaku is amazed that he can move it again, and he thanks Kashima for his help, but he tells him to thank Takamura instead, because the cut was so clean that the tissues weren't damaged. Gaku recalls his fight with Takamura, but X tells him to stop thinking about it, telling him he's the first person to survive a battle against Takamura. X notes that the attack on the JAA was a failure, because they weren't expecting Takamura to appear, and Gaku wants to learn about him. But X reveals that he knows nothing about him, because he's a complete mystery, and he thinks Takamura must be a monster created from people's imaginations. X notes that he's ridiculously strong, so it will be harder for them to execute their plans, and he thinks about Sakamoto, as he notes that he wasn't expecting him to change so drastically. Gaku wonders what they should do next, asking X if they should target another JAA branch, but he notes that it's too risky, because the other branches have already improved their security. He thinks they should add pawns to their group to replace Yuta, and Gaku wonders if they should hire assassins from the JAA. But X notes that he wants pawns that are untainted, so that it will be easier for him to influence them. Sakamoto returns to his store, where Shin reveals that he knows nothing about the JCC, because he got his license through an external exam. Heisuke is impressed that he got his license without going to school, and Sakamoto realizes that his goods have been replaced, so he thinks Nagumo must have made a mess while he was on duty. Lou shows them the JCC's website, and we learn that it's a boarding school with 35 instructors, but only 10% of their students get their Hitman licenses, while the others either die or quit during training. She knows that Sakamoto graduated from the JCC, so she asks him if he can return as an alumnus, but he reveals that the school's security is tight, and they don't let people into their grounds so easily. Aya suddenly joins them, and she's angry because she saw a JCC flyer in the living room, asking Sakamoto if he's planning to raise Hana as an assassin. His friends realize that it's about the JCC transfer exam, and they think they can infiltrate the school as students, so Shin and Sakamoto decide to take the exam. We see them on a plane with the other applicants, and Shin is worried that their age will give them away, because they're too old to be students. But he realizes that the plane isn't full of kids, and Sakamoto reveals that the JCC has no age limit. He notes that the transfer exam is extremely difficult, so there are applicants who take it year after year, but Shin is worried that they'll recognize Sakamoto. So he notes that he will wear a disguise, but Shin thinks wearing a cap isn't good enough, and everyone wonders why they're making so much noise. A girl wonders why they aren't nervous, and we see her holding a good luck charm, thinking she needs to do anything it takes to pass the exam. We see them eating together, as Sakamoto reveals that the transfer exam is harder than the general admissions test, so he tells Shin to keep his guard up. But an applicant named Jack asks them if they're new, and we learn that it's his 6th time taking the exam. He tells them it's better to take the exam on an empty stomach, because hunger sharpens their senses, and everyone realizes that he's bothering the newbies as usual. He notes that only 1 out of 40 will pass the exam, and it changes every year, so it's better to be ready all the time, because nobody knows what to expect. But Sakamoto doesn't care, so Jack eats his food, and tells him he'll be the first to die. The girl feels sorry for him, but she realizes that she needs to focus, because she could die during the exam. A girl named Mizuno greets the applicants, and tells them there are 360 of them, but she reveals that there are test examiners in disguise. She notes that they have special bullets with JCC written on them, and the applicants must steal them from the examiners to pass the test. But a boy named Mafuyu asks her if he can kill them to steal the bullet, so she reveals that he's allowed to do it, and weapons suddenly fall from the compartments. So they realize that the test has begun, and they start killing each other, because they don't know who the examiners are. She reveals that the weapons have been assigned to them at random, but Jack is angry since he only received a spatula, and he tells her to give him another weapon. But she disarms him and hits him with it, telling him hitmen must be able to adapt to any situation. A man tries to kill Mafuyu, who dodges his bullets and shoots him in the head, and he checks the man's pockets. But he doesn't find the bullet he's looking for, and he realizes that his hand is dirty, so he starts cleaning it. An applicant analyzes the situation, thinking the examiners must be in their mid to late 20s, and he decides to observe before making his move. Another applicant hides in the compartment, where he plans to wait until everyone finishes killing each other, so that he can take the JCC bullet from whoever's left. Shin dodges a man's attacks, and he threatens him with his knife, but he realizes that the man isn't an examiner, so he just knocks him out. He notes that he's having a hard time reading everyone's thoughts because there are too many of them, and we see the girl with a machine gun, but she wonders how it works. She looks like an easy target, but she suddenly starts firing, so everyone freaks out and runs away. She sees Sakamoto holding a pen, and she thinks he's doomed because his weapon is useless. There's a man that approaches him, so she thinks about helping him, but he easily knocks the man out with his pen, and everyone's impressed by his skills. They think he must be an examiner since he's OP, so they decide to gang up on him, but he easily takes them down. A man prepares to shoot the girl, but Sakamoto throws his pen to open a compartment and a bag falls on the man's head. But he starts shooting in all directions, so Sakamoto destroys his weapon and knocks him out. The girl thanks him for saving her, but he shows her the JCC bullets he got from the man, and she can't believe he was one of the examiners. She tells Sakamoto that his skills are amazing, and notes that he inspired her to do her best to pass the exam, but he gives her one of the bullets, telling her that he doesn't need 3 of them. He thinks about giving the other one to Shin, but she returns the bullet he gave her, and explains that she has an idol who probably wouldn't accept the bullet. She notes that she's nothing like them, because she's so weak that she probably won't be a successful hitman, but Sakamoto tells her she'll never know until she tries. We see Mafuyu choking Mizuno, and he takes her bullets, but he mentions that he still wants to kill her. Shin tries to kick him, so he jumps away and tells him to stay out of his way. Shin struggles to dodge his attacks, and a bullet hits his shoulder, but his blood lands on Mafuyu's face, and he suddenly freaks out. He immediately cleans it, so Shin realizes that he's a germaphobe, and he reveals that he didn't want to take the transfer exam, but he couldn't make it to the general admission test because he got sick. He mentions that he doesn't want to get his hands dirty, so he takes out the swords hidden in his shoes, and uses them to attack Shin, who barely manages to avoid them. He tries to shoot Mafuyu, but he blocks the bullets with his swords, and he manages to close the distance, so Shin fights him with his knife, but he gets pushed back. Mafuyu prepares to finish him off, but he uses his new power to predict Mafuyu's movements, and counters with a barrage of punches. Mafuyu falls to the ground, and Shin apologizes for beating him up, but he explains that there's someone he needs to catch up to. We see that before Shin got onto the plane, he remembers how X called him weak, so he thinks he needs to get stronger. He tells Sakamoto not to help him during the transfer exam, since he wants to see what he's capable of, and Sakamoto tells him not to fail. Back in the present, Mafuyu wonders how Shin was able to read his moves, and he tells Mafuyu to bring it on, so he charges in, but Shin dodges his attack. He wonders why he can't touch Shin, who manages to land a kick, but he grabs onto his leg, thinking he can defeat him if he holds him in place. He tries to cut his head off, but Shin breaks his weapon, as he reveals that he was able to read his mind. He takes him down, and Mafuyu admits defeat, telling Shin to finish him off, but he explains that he doesn't kill kids. He tells Mafuyu to give him a JCC bullet, but he suddenly starts crying, and tells Shin to pay for the weapon he broke. Shin realizes that he's a weirdo, and tells him to stop crying since it isn't a big deal, telling him his talents are amazing for a 14-year-old. He mentions that everyone praises him for his talents, so Shin finds him annoying, and tells him he can still get his license even if he fails the exam. But he explains that he isn't interested in the license, and notes that he just wants to go to the JCC to build connections, since he wants to join the order. Shin wonders how he learned about them, but the man hiding in the compartment suddenly takes Mafuyu's bullets, so Shin beats him up. He tells Mafuyu that he doesn't need connections to join the order, and notes that he needs the ultimate set of skills instead, but Shin mentions that he'll also make it to the top. He gives Mafuyu a bullet so he can pass the first stage, but he tells Shin to give him a different one since it has blood on it. Shin mentions that he hates his personality, but Mafuyu reminds him that he was the one who took the bullets, so Shin gives him a different one. We see the applicants shooting each other, and the girl shoots them with her machine gun, but she doesn't hit anyone. She thinks she'll fail since she still can't find a JCC bullet, but Sakamoto suddenly approaches her and asks her if she knows how to aim. She admits that she lacks training, so he decides to help her out and gives her tips on how to improve her aim. He shoots the guns of 2 applicants, and she can't believe he's just a rookie since his explanation is perfect, so he tells her he used to teach someone how to use a gun. She asks for his name, but he doesn't want her to recognize him, so he just tells her to call him Taro, and she introduces herself as Akira. We see a group of men ganging up on another guy, who takes a video of them as they try to kill him, and he notes that their facial expressions are wonderful. But he wants to see more excitement, so he drops a JCC bullet in front of them, and they all try to grab it, as he thinks the scene is perfect. He instantly cuts their heads off, and he mentions that he's glad to be an examiner, but we learn that he's a member of the order named Kanaguri. Everyone continues killing each other, while the pilot notes that only 63 out of the 360 candidates are left, and he tells everyone they'll land in 30 minutes. His co-pilot asks for his opinion about the transfer exam, so he notes that it's nothing like the previous tests, since more than half of the candidates have already been eliminated. Shin tells Mafuyu to stop following him, but he asks Shin why he's taking the exam, since he wants to learn more about him. Shin tells Mafuyu to leave him alone, but we see Kanaguri taking a video of them, since he finds them interesting. They see him approaching, and he notes that their performance was perfect, before giving a man a JCC bullet for helping him shoot the scene. Shin recognizes him as the founder of murder films, and we learn that his movies have a cult following because of his unique filming method. Mafuyu wonders what he's doing there, so he notes that he's shooting his next movie, and Mafuyu tells him to stop filming them. But Kanaguri refuses to listen to him, so he tells Shin they should just leave, since movies are overrated anyway. Kanaguri asks him what he means, so he explains that movies are nothing compared to online videos, since they're so long and boring. Kanaguri becomes upset hearing this, and he tells Mafuyu he deserves to die, since he insulted the art of filmmaking. Kanaguri charges in, so Shin tells Mafuyu to stay back, and he activates his new power, which allows him to predict Kanaguri's movements. But the prediction suddenly changes, so Shin wonders what happened, and Kanaguri prepares to take them out, but he stops as his weapon gets shot. Shin realizes that Sakamoto has arrived to save them, but Kanaguri mentions that he's found the perfect protagonist, and everyone thinks he's talking about Sakamoto. But he notes that he's referring to Akira, and Sakamoto tries to stab him, but he jumps away, and reveals that he took everyone's JCC bullets. He wants to shoot another good scene, so he shoots the pilot, and the plane starts to crash, so everyone panics, while he records everything that's happening. But he notes that it isn't as dramatic as he expected, so he takes out his weapon, and uses it to destroy the plane. Everyone gets sucked out, but he thinks it's a perfect movie scene, and the other examiners deploy their parachutes. Their head Usami wonders what they should do, since all the candidates might die, but another examiner named Edo is just glad that they have parachutes. He thinks he screwed up when he made Kanaguri an examiner, but she tells him not to worry, since they can just tell the candidates that it's the second stage of the test. He decides to go with her suggestion, and tells the candidates that to pass the second stage, they must have a JCC bullet after they survive the landing. But Shin reads the mind of one of the examiners, so he realizes that it isn't supposed to be a part of the test. One of the applicants analyzes the situation, and notes that they'll fall into the water in 2 minutes, but another man thinks they won't survive if they hit the ocean at their current speed. Kanaguri takes a video of everyone, wondering how Akira will deal with the situation, but Sakamoto suddenly attacks him, and takes back the bullets from him. Akira is amazed that he's still thinking about passing the exam, since everyone's about to fall to their deaths, and he tries to use his apron as a parachute, but it only makes him fall faster. Akira is impressed by his courage, and she wonders what she can do to help everyone, but she realizes that she's only good at household chores. She recalls how she used to sew clothes for her family, and she comes up with an idea, telling everyone to give her their clothes. They decide to trust her, and she stitches their clothes together with incredible speed, managing to create a parachute. They grab onto it, and Shin notes that it's slowing them down, but it still isn't enough, and they all crash into the water. Akira is glad that they survived the fall, but she realizes that she's about to drown, since she doesn't know how to swim. Sakamoto saves her, and takes her to the shore, where she sees one of the bullets. Shin tells her to take it, and she notes that it doesn't belong to her, but Sakamoto explains that she earned it since she saved everyone. Jack realizes that he's the only one who doesn't have a bullet, but he's just glad to be alive. Sakamoto looks at the stitches that Akira made, realizing that her needlework is amazing, so he finds her interesting, since she was able to do it while falling. We see that Kanaguri also survived the fall, but he realizes that he can no longer shoot his film since his camera is broken, and he thinks he has no reason left to live. The survivors gather at the shore, and Akira thinks it's a miracle that she made it, telling Sakamoto and Shin that she wants to be their classmate. Jack suddenly joins them, and he reveals that he also made it to the next stage, since he found a bullet on the beach. The examiners realize that most of the candidates have been killed, and they decide to pick a game that won't lead to more deaths in the next stage, but Mizuno tells Yusami that the others will arrive soon. He tells everyone that they have new participants, and 3 candidates appear, as he notes that they'll be joining from the 3rd stage. One of them, named Torimaru, mentions that she's nervous, but Jack is angry since they skipped the 1st and 2nd stage, where hundreds of them didn't make it. He notices that she has a keychain, and he thinks it's stupid, but she suddenly gets on top of him, and tells him to calm down. Yusami reveals that the 3 candidates were recommended by professional hitmen and agencies, so they have a proven track record, but he tells Torimaru not to kill people during the exam. She explains that she was angry at Jack since he mocked her Sakamoto keychain, revealing that he's her favorite, and Shin is surprised hearing this, telling Sakamoto they should stay away from her. Meanwhile, we see X trying to contact someone in the exam, but his call won't go through, and he thinks it's because cell phones aren't allowed during the test. Kashima thinks it's risky to invite a student with no experience to their group, but X explains that young people have the power to change society, since they don't have anything weighing them down. We return to the candidates, as Yusami mentions that they'll be working in teams for the 3rd stage, telling them to open their bullets. They realize that there are headbands inside, but their colors are different, and he tells them they'll be playing a game of tail tag. He notes that the goal is to steal their opponent's tails, and explains that they have 2 days to complete the test, telling them they'll be eliminated if they lose their tails. They think that the game serves as team survival training, with the tail around the hip implying that they should protect their lumbar spine at all costs, since it's the source of all movements. Yusami tells them they're right, but Shin reads his mind, and learns that he's lying, since the real reason they made the test easier is to avoid any more deaths. He notes that they'll split into 7 teams, but Shin realizes that Sakamoto isn't his teammate, so they'll be fighting against each other. We see that Sakamoto is with Akira and Jack, while Shin is with Mafuyu and a boy named Kaji, who is one of the 3 that just arrived. Yusami notes that the goal is to get as many tails as possible before time runs out, and he mentions that it's time to begin the exam, so everyone runs off. One of the teams think about taking advantage of the terrain and set up traps around the hill, while Torimaru is confident that her team will win the game. Sakamoto tells Shin that they should meet somewhere safe, but he tells Sakamoto that they're enemies, so he won't hold back if they need to fight. Sakamoto leaves with the other 2, but Mafuyu asks Shin if he's sure of his decision, so he explains that staying in a bigger group would make them easier prey. A man suddenly lunges at him from behind, but he uses a branch to stop him and takes his tail, telling Mafuyu he won't grow if he keeps relying on Sakamoto. Jack shows Akira how he tied his tail, and notes that it's his tactic, but she tells him it's cheating. She realizes that Sakamoto is sad, since he remembers how Shin always wanted to be by his side, but Jack tells him to stop crying about it. We see a team running away, but Torimaru suddenly appears above them, and tells them she wants to collect all the colors. She sends them flying as she smashes the ground, but they wonder why she's still pursuing them, since she already has a green tail. Their leader offers to give her another color if she lets them go, but she slices off their arms and takes their tails, explaining that she needs them to display and for safekeeping. She notes that her tails look cute, wondering what color she should take next, and she sees Shin's team in the woods, so she decides to make them her next target. We return to Sakamoto, as Jack wonders why they're eating, since the other teams are busy collecting tails. Akira notes that food is the best remedy for sadness, and he thinks they should focus on the exam, but she invites him to join them and gives him a drink. He gives it a try, but he spits it out since it tastes disgusting, and he wonders why Sakamoto built a house, since they aren't on a camping trip. A butterfly lands on his shoulder, and he starts to panic, telling Akira to get rid of it since he's afraid of bugs. He notes that he hates the way they move, but she explains that they're beautiful creatures, and they follow flight paths that only they can see thanks to their pheromones. He tells her to get rid of the one on his shoulder, so she takes it without touching its wings, and it flies away. Sakamoto is impressed that she was able to take it before it could react, and he asks her who taught her moves, since he can tell that she's skilled. But she notes that she's useless when it comes to combat, since she loses her composure when she stares into her opponent's eyes. Jack tells her to relax, since they won't be killing each other at this stage, but one of the applicants suddenly runs past them and tells them to escape since he's being chased by a crazy woman. Jack follows him, but he triggers a trap, and the team gets caught in a net, which is made from steel. The man can't believe they fell for the trap, since a hitman isn't supposed to trust strangers, and he orders his companion to finish them off, so he fires his grenade launcher. We return to Shin, as he argues with Mafuyu, since they lost an enemy team after he refused to cross a river. But Toromaru suddenly attacks them, and she's impressed that Shin was able to dodge her axe, asking him if he can read her mind. She mentions that she wants a white tail, since it's the same color as Sakamoto, but Mafuyu kicks her away. She manages to block the attack, but she realizes that her Sakamoto doll has been damaged, so she starts crying. We return to Sakamoto, as he blocks the explosion with his apron, and he tries to remove the net, but he realizes that he can't. Jack apologizes for getting his team into trouble, and Akira manages to escape through one of the openings, but the enemies open fire. The man notes that they need to get rid of Sakamoto's team, since they might try to get revenge, and Akira tries to help them escape, but the enemy team suddenly approaches her. She starts to lose her composure, and the man thinks she's a loser, since she can't look him in the eyes. She notes that she doesn't want to hurt people, but Sakamoto tells her to escape, telling her not to worry since they'll be fine. She remembers when her aunt told her the same thing, but she ended up losing her, so she thinks she needs to fight to protect Sakamoto. She notes that she'd rather be an assassin than lose the people she cares about, and she suddenly cuts the man with her hand, so his teammates panic and run away. She chases after them, but Sakamoto manages to break free, and he stops her before she can kill them, telling her to calm down. She wonders what happened, but he rushes to the man's side, and realizes that he'll die if he's not treated, so he gives him first aid. Jack scolds her for being too violent, but she explains that she did it to save them, and apologizes for losing control, explaining that she just followed the path she could see. Sakamoto remembers his classmate Rion, who was one of the top students, and she told him she could see paths to killing people. He asks for Akira's last name, and he discovers that she's related to Rion. He recalls the moment that Rion displayed her skills at the shooting range, and she mocks Sakamoto and Nagumo since she beat them. But they think she shouldn't be so proud, since the target can't move, and she reminds them that they promised to buy her lunch if she won. Back in the present, Sakamoto asks Akira about Rion, so she reveals that Rion is her aunt, and she went there to look for her. We return to Toromaru, as Mafuyu tells her that she must be obsessed with someone, since she doesn't have a life. She becomes upset hearing this, since he's criticizing the way she lives her life, and she tells him he deserves to die for mocking her devotion to Sakamoto. Shin's team runs away, as she starts pursuing them, and he asks Kaji if he can stop her, since he's from the same group as her, but he tells them there's another issue. Mafuyu notes that they should just kill her, but Shin doesn't want to do it, and Kaji tries to tell them they need to stop, but she suddenly starts shooting them, and they fall into a river. Shin and Mafuyu are about to drown, but Kaji saves them, and Shin wonders why Toromaru is crazy about Sakamoto. But she continues to follow them, and we learn that she heard everything, so she tells them he's like a god to her. In a flashback, Toromaru meets Sakamoto for the first time, and she falls in love with the way he fought, because he showed no emotions. She becomes his #1 fan, and her world gets brighter, as she starts improving her appearance and practicing her conversation skills, so that she can talk to him the next time they meet. We return to the present, as Toromaru attacks Shin, who tells Mafuyu to help him out, but he mentions that he isn't feeling well. Shin realizes that he needs to fight alone, and he tells her to bring it on, but she recognizes his pose, since Sakamoto always does it before fighting. She realizes that he's also a Sakamoto fan, and Shin is embarrassed that she found him out, but she asks him what he likes about Sakamoto. She reveals that she likes his cool attitude, and notes that he's like a murder machine, but Shin tells her she's wrong about him. He explains that he used to feel the same way, but he realized that Sakamoto is actually a kind person, since he won't fire his employees even if his business isn't doing well. Shin mentions that he wants to be as good as him, so that he can become his partner, but Toromaru is angry, since she thinks she knows Sakamoto better than anyone. She refuses to acknowledge Shin as his #1 fan, and she continues to attack him, but he uses his ability to read her movements. We see a boy named Nea, who followed Toramaru, and his teammates are impressed by her fighting skills. They tell him to keep up the good work since he already got 3 tails for the team, but he starts looking around, so they wonder if he can sense an enemy. He suddenly removes his tail, and they wonder why he would do that since it will get him disqualified, but he doesn't seem to care. We return to Shin, as he continues to dodge Toramaru's attacks, and she's impressed that he can keep up with her, but notes that he can't beat her by only dodging. She throws her axe at him, so he jumps away, but she suddenly prepares to shoot him, but he kicks her gun to avoid it. We see Mafuyu and Kaji watching the fight, and Kaji thinks about helping Shin, but he doesn't know how to talk to his teammates since he's extremely shy. So he decides not to do anything until they talk to him, and he tries to rub Mafuyu's back, but he tells Kaji not to touch him. Shin manages to land a kick, but Toramaru endures it and pushes him back, telling him he needs to defeat her with a single blow if he wants to win. She starts shooting him, so he runs away, as he wonders what Sakamoto would do to defeat her, but he realizes that he needs to stop thinking like that, since he isn't as strong as Sakamoto. He uses his powers to scan the area, and he realizes that there are fish nearby, so he comes up with a plan. She lunges at him from behind, but he suddenly punches her away, and she mentions that he can't hurt her with his weak attacks. But he continues to push her back, and she falls off a cliff, as Shin reveals that he read the fish's thoughts, so he knows that there's a waterfall nearby. She falls into the water, so he thinks it's over, but he suddenly hears her thoughts, and realizes that she's drowning. So he dives into the water to save her, and he sees her at the bottom, realizing she almost drowned since her doll got stuck. He takes her to the surface, and when she finally wakes up, she's glad to see that her doll is okay, but Shin tells her he won't save her again. She wonders why he would save her, so he explains that Sakamoto wouldn't have left her to drown, and she realizes that he's better than her, so she tells him he can have the title of #1 fan. He explains that he isn't interested, and asks her to give him her tail instead, but Nea suddenly appears behind her, and punches her away. We see that Gaku is controlling Nea, and he notes that he feels like he's playing an FPS game, but Shin's teammates appear, and they realize that Nea is behaving strangely. Gaku starts eating bread, and he notes that Shin looks familiar, but Kashima tells him to focus on looking for new recruits. So he mentions that he doesn't find anyone interesting, but X tells him not to give up, and he notes that the gadget is impressive, but he thinks his arm is broken since he can't move it, so Kashima helps him put his goggles on, and he realizes that the examiners are questioning Nea. Usami tells him he's disqualified for breaking the rules, and notes that he's supposed to be out of the game since he removed his tail. But he eliminated 4 candidates in the woods, and the examiners scold him for killing them, so Gaku realizes that he needs to take them out. He slams one of them to the ground, and uses his body to smash the others, so a sniper tries to take him out, but he uses the body as a human shield, and throws it at the sniper. Eito attacks him with her weapon, and she manages to hit him, but he grabs onto her and starts spinning her. He throws her at the water, and she bounces off repeatedly, before smashing into a wall. Usami realizes that he's the only one left, and he tells Shin to escape with his teammates, so Mafuyu and Kaji start running away. But Shin refuses to leave, since he thinks he can't get stronger if he doesn't fight. Nea charges in, so Shin uses his power to read his movements, but he realizes that he has already reached his limit, since he used up all of his time during his last fight. But Gaku suddenly struggles to defend himself, so Kashima wonders what's happening, and we see that Toramaru and Mafuyu are ganging up on him. Shin joins the fight, and he attacks with Mafuyu, but Nea grabs onto them and pushes them away. He kicks Shin away, and he wonders why he can't read Nea's mind, while Kaji realizes that he just missed his chance to join the fight. He listens to Nea's heartbeat, and realizes that he's sleeping, so he's confused. But he hears the sound of machinery, so he knows that something's wrong, but he thinks nobody will believe him if he tells them the truth. Toramaru opens fire, so Nea jumps away, and Shin charges at him, but Nea blocks his attacks and pushes him back. Toramaru distracts him, and gives her axe to Shin, but Nea dodges it. Shin returns her axe, but Nea suddenly holds his head, so everyone wonders if they were able to hurt him. But we see that he just hit his head against a wall, and he tells Kashima that his movements are limited, while Shin and the others think it's their chance to attack him. Kashima tells Gaku not to push Nea's body, and Gaku asks him about Nea, so Kashima reveals that he's just a kid they hired for the day. Gaku wonders how they found him, so Kashima notes that they posted an ad online, and Gaku thinks they should recruit members using the same method. But Kashima tells him it's important to have face-to-face interviews so that they can recognize those who have talent. But Gaku thinks they should just beat everyone up and recruit those who are still alive. Naya rushes forward and knocks everyone down, but Mafuyu immediately recovers, so Naya smashes him to the ground and kicks him away. Toramaru gets back up, and Naya is about to crush her, but Kachi saves her and starts looking for Mafuyu. He struggles to get back up, but he remembers how Shin told him that he can't get stronger if he doesn't fight, so he's determined not to give up. Kachi tries to stop him, but he keeps moving forward, and Kachi wonders how he can face a powerful opponent without hesitation, while he just watches since he's afraid of making a mistake. Toramaru notices that Mafuyu can barely move, so she launches him forward, but Naya dodges his attack and counters with a devastating blow, which knocks Mafuyu out. But Gaku's goggles suddenly crack, so he can't see what's on his left side, and Kachi wonders how his allies are so amazing even though they're getting crushed. He thinks he's nothing compared to them, but Shin reveals that he can read his mind, and tells him to take action since it will make him feel better. Kachi thinks he's right, and he tells Shin to follow his plan, but Shin mentions that he can't read Naya's mind. Kachi notes that Naya is being controlled, revealing that he can tell from the sounds, since Naya's goggles work as a headset, and he can hear the other side. Naya rushes forward, but Kachi pushes Shin before he can hit them, and we learn that he can dodge Naya's attacks since his movements are lagging. He shatters the ground with his fist, and everyone falls into a cave, but Kachi thinks it's perfect, since the sound will echo while they're inside. Shin wonders what Kachi meant by lag, reminding him that he can hear his thoughts since he's psychic, and Kachi is embarrassed that Shin heard everything he was thinking. Shin tells him to focus on what's important, so he explains that he can hear the sounds in Naya's headset before he moves, revealing that there's a split-second delay before the real enemy's move registers. But Kachi notes that he can only dodge his attacks, and tells Shin to work with him to defeat Naya, who suddenly rushes forward, so Kachi tells Shin he's going for a straight punch, but he still gets hit, since it takes time for Kachi to put his thoughts into words, and Naya kicks him away, while Gaku starts drinking, thinking the fight is boring. Shin recalls how Sakamoto helped him in the amusement park, realizing Sakamoto predicted his opponent's moves so that he could dodge them. But Kachi isn't as good as Sakamoto, so it takes time for him to relay information, and Shin realizes that he can't win unless he uses his precognition skill. He recalls how Mia told him that he can only use the skill for 5 minutes, and we see that he's already passed his limit, but he activates his skill anyway. Naya charges in, but Shin dodges his attack, so Gaku thinks the fight is getting interesting. Shin uses his skill to see Kachi's future, and Naya is about to hit him, but he jumps in the air and manages to land a kick. Gaku's arm is damaged, but Shin realizes that his vision is blurring, and he doesn't know how much longer he can last. Gaku tells Kashima to hold his drink, and he starts fighting seriously, as Kachi grabs onto him, but Gaku just throws him away. He tells Shin to buy time for him, and he wears his headphones and closes his eyes, while Shin struggles against Naya, who punches him in the gut. He's angry since Kachi isn't helping him, but he notes that he has memorized the sounds, and Naya charges at him, but Kachi dodges his attack and uses his move against him. He tells Naya that he has learned his moves, and Shin is impressed that he can learn just by listening, but he wonders why Kachi didn't do that from the beginning. So he explains that it requires a lot of focus, and he needed someone to keep Naya occupied while he was listening. Kashima suggests playing music to disable his abilities, but Gaku tells him his songs are boring, and he thinks things are just getting started. Shin and Kachi gang up on Naya, who starts to fall back, so Shin wonders if he's retreating, but Kachi knows that he can't do that, since the real enemy's movements are limited. Kachi punches him away, and Gaku hits a wall, while Shin prepares to kick him, so he destroys the wall to stop Shin. But he reveals that he was expecting him to do that, and Kachi realizes that it's their chance to take him down, so they charge at him together. But Gaku apologizes to Kashima, since he's about to destroy Naya's body, and he suddenly breaks his arms. He punches Kachi with tremendous force, and follows up with a sonic attack, which overwhelms his senses. Shin starts to feel strange since he overused his powers, and Naya punches him away, so he crashes into a wall, where he watches as Naya prepares to finish him off, thinking it's all over for him. But Sakamoto suddenly arrives to save him, so Kashima freaks out, telling Gaku that he's a legendary hitman. but he reveals that he already knows that, and notes that he always wanted to fight him. Nea throws a rock at Sakamoto, who manages to catch it, and he dodges Nea's attack, but water starts coming out of the wall. He tells Shin to escape with Kaji, so he thinks he's being a burden again, but Sakamoto tells him they'll divide and conquer. Shin starts climbing to the top, while Sakamoto smashes the wall, causing the underground river to flow into the cave. He starts fighting Nea as they're getting swept away, but Kashima wonders what Gaku is doing, since he looks ridiculous. Sakamoto and Nea get blown out of the cave, and they crash into the plane wreck, but Gaku wonders why he can't move. We see that Sakamoto has secured him to the pilot's seat, and he throws him away, but Nea manages to get off before he falls out of the plane. Sakamoto hits him with a barrage of attacks, and he tries to fight back, but Sakamoto suddenly disappears and kicks him away. He prepares to smash him with a suitcase, and Nea destroys it, but Sakamoto takes a book and slams it into his face. Gaku realizes that he's a threat, so he needs to be destroyed as soon as possible, but he jumps to the other side of the plane to launch Nea into the air. He spins the plane's wheels and rides it to accelerate, and he flies up into the air, where he delivers the finishing blow. Gaku's equipment is destroyed, but he's glad that he was able to fight Sakamoto. We see Torimaru enjoying herself as Sakamoto tends to her wounds, but she doesn't recognize him when she wakes up. Usami notes that due to the incident, they can't continue the exam, so they will all be assessed based on their scores up to this point. They all manage to pass, but as Usami calls out Sakamoto's name, Torimaru is surprised that he has the same name as our hero. But Usami asks him what a legendary hitman is doing there, and Torimaru freaks out as she realizes he's the real deal. She can't believe he's now fat, but she becomes depressed, realizing she's a fake fan. Nea wakes up confused, and he wonders why his body hurts, but Usami mentions they will be handing him over to the JAA. Nea cries as he explains how he just found a job online, since he needed to pay his debts, and Shin can tell that he's telling the truth. He mentions a man wearing a deer mask, so Sakamoto realizes he's talking about Kashima. He wonders what X wanted with the exam, asking Nea if he knows anything else, so he checks his phone, but the contact details have been deleted. Kaji mentions that he heard something about recruiting through the headset, so Sakamoto wonders about why they're trying to expand their group, and he notes that they need to continue to the JCC to find a clue about X. Meanwhile, X learns about Sakamoto being at the exam, and he thinks it's a problem, since Sakamoto knows that he's Yuzuki, so he orders Kashima to destroy any trace of him left in the JCC. Kashima thinks it will be harder to infiltrate the JCC since they lost Nea, but Gaku mentions that they were there to recruit talent, and he notes that there were two that he found interesting. Helicopters arrive to get everyone off the island, and Akira thanks Sakamoto for helping her pass the exam, excited to see him again when they start at the JCC. Mafuyu is paired up with Torimaru for the helicopter, and she notes that he looks pale, but they suddenly realize that Kanaguri is with them. Mafuyu thinks they need to escape, but another man known as the Reaper stops him, and X tells him to be careful with them, since they're going to be friends. We see Shishiba as he complains about working too much, wondering where Kanaguri is. Saragi wonders how he was even hired, so Nagumo notes that he had a fight about a movie with another Order member, and ended up killing them and taking their spot. They buy lottery tickets from a stand, and as they scratch them, we see it's how they get information about their next mission. They need to investigate another attack from X, and Shishiba wonders if he's really trying to take out the JAA. Saragi wonders what will happen if it's destroyed, so Nagumo notes that it would lead to Japan also being destroyed, because it would be overrun by criminals. Saragi wonders about the police, but Shishiba notes that they only have a clearance rate of around 30%, and if they account for the cases that they aren't even aware of, it would only be about 10%. Saragi thinks they're like heroes of justice since they kill all the criminals, but Nagumo thinks that there's no justice in murder, and he thinks that an excessive sense of justice can be more harmful than a villain. Meanwhile at X's base, Kanaguri tries to get a reaction from Mafuyu, but Mafuyu gives him nothing. Reaper finds Kanaguri's filming a waste of time, so they start to argue, but Reaper's brother Jam tries to calm them down. X tells Mafuyu and Torimaru that they aren't planning on harming them, but Mafuyu doesn't trust him. Kashima mentions how they are recruiting for the goal of destroying the JAA, and Mafuyu wonders why they would want to do that, so X tells them it's to restore the natural way of the world, saying it's for justice. Kashima also notes that they provide health insurance, along with a number of other benefits, but Mafuyu wonders what will happen if he refuses. Back at Sakamoto's shop, Heisuke is impressed that they passed the exam, and he notes that the JCC holds a number of great events, but Shin reminds him that they aren't going there for fun, and their focus is the JCC database to get information on X, but Lu thinks he could still make some friends there, so he thinks about Mafuyu. Hana suddenly brings them a letter, and Shin realizes it's their results from the exam. Heisuke can't believe that Shin got the top score, but they wonder what Sakamoto got, and he reveals that he failed. Everyone is shocked, and Shin thinks it must be an error, but Yusami tells him that they couldn't pass him because there's a rule in the JCC that a person with a bounty on their head can't be admitted. Nagumo suddenly appears, and he laughs at Sakamoto for failing, which makes him mad, but Nagumo tells him he can get in as a teacher instead. He mentions how he was also trying to get into the JCC, but since he has a mission in Kyoto, he tells Sakamoto to take his spot. Shin thinks it's a good idea, so Sakamoto mentions how he can't step foot onto JCC grounds, but Nagumo tells him he has a plan. We learn that the JCC is a 4-year boarding school with over 1,000 students, where they are trained in the skills to become elite assassins. We see Akira nervously walking around, when a man in critical condition is rushed past her from the assassination class, and another student notes that it's the 10th one this month, mentioning how they can die if they don't have the proper skills. Akira arrives late for her class, so the teacher calls her up to participate in a demonstration, and she wonders if she's about to die. She's paired up with a man named Tanashi, who scares her since he's huge, and they have to practice with a knife, but he thinks about messing with her, so he tries to stab her for real. Akira manages to block it, but Tanashi is suddenly beaten up, and the instructor mentions that they have a new student teacher helping out, as we learn that Nagumo used one of his disguises to make Sakamoto look like Aya, but he mentions that it will only last for 24 hours, so he needs to find the information on X before then. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.